Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle. We've got a new microphone tonight, and getting good reviews in the comment section. It's very strange for me because normally that thing is hanging on a thing, one of those, things. But now it's on the desktop here, and I feel like I'm not talking to anybody. But apparently it sounds good, so hopefully it does. We certainly have been trying to improve the sound here, and turning off the drives helped, and I was hoping this new microphone might help. I listened to the right angles were recorded on it, and I actually thought it might have been worse, but hopefully it's a little bit better. In any event, here we are. As long as you can make out the actual language, that's pretty much good enough as far as the extraordinarily limited demands of the Stratosphere Lounge require. So anyway, good to see everybody. Big show tonight, just in terms of announcements and things. Been doing an awful lot of thinking because well, that's what I do. Just had a chance to finish up some things, and that was handy. One last little adjustment here, and I think I'll probably be satisfied with everything. So in the course of the last week, since we saw you last, or since you saw me last, or we saw each other last, or however this works, was able to finish a couple things that have been ongoing for a while, and they're kind of put away now. Is it only wonder? Yeah, that's fine. Hang on, I have to do this manually. I have to get up off the couch and change the channel. What kind of world is this? Okay, so here's what we got. Got a couple things to show today. Not much. And then I've been joking about this, teasing about it, playing around with it, and finally I got to the point where I was able to commit to it. So we got the second channel up. We've got the finished animation on the second channel. I really, really like the graphics. It took me a long time to get everything I needed, but the good news is it's ready. So what we're going to be doing here now is we're going to be doing 2 streams a week. We're going to be doing Stratosphere Lounge on Thursday nights, and then we're going to be doing a second channel stream on Monday nights. So I think that with that second channel stream up, this will probably make life easier for everybody. So what that means is Thursday nights on Stratosphere Lounge, we'll be dealing in the future, going forward, we'll be dealing with the political stuff on Stratosphere Lounge, and then on Monday nights we'll be dealing with the pop culture, animation stuff, and all the rest of it. So, GK Masterson put the link up in the comments there. It's called the Stratosphere Studios. If you get a chance to go, and we'll put the link in there, and right now the only thing living there is the finished animation, which I'm about to show you. The finished animation, as we've said here in the comment section. But we're gonna separate the streams. You should never cross the streams. So Thursday nights, Stratosphere Lounge, as always, and that's going to be taking pretty much exclusively political questions. And then on Monday nights, we're going to be doing maybe Stratosphere Studio. I had a thought maybe I'd call it Table Read, but that's actually kind of weak. Yeah, is this? Yeah, we got a nice little animated logo there for the whole thing, and so we're just actually really happy with it. I think it looks great. So here's what we're going to do. I thought maybe I should just include a link to this, and then I realized, what about space questions? Asked Dave. That's a profoundly deep and interesting question, Dave. I'm going to go with space questions can be on the Stratosphere Lounge. Science fiction space questions would go into Stratosphere Studios. And if there's the slightest deviation, there's going to be hell to pay. So we're going to be doing that. We're going to be streaming to Twitch, but also to YouTube starting on Monday. I understand it's possible to do both simultaneously, so I don't have to do 4 shows. That's a relief. And then we'll start to stream Stratosphere Lounge directly to YouTube as well. I was going to just simply include a link to this and then to the finished animation. When I say finished, I've been talking about finished, nearly finished, almost finished, close to finished. When I say finished, I mean it's mastered and I have put the stuff away. It's archived, it's backed up, and then it is done. And I thought I'd throw a link to that. And then I said to myself, you guys have suffered through the whole process. You've gone trooping with me down this road for almost a year or whatever. So I'm going to play the finished animation here on the Stratosphere Lounge. And I know many of you have seen this before, and some of you have seen parts of it before, probably 5-6 times. But this is it. This is as done as it gets, including the new end title. And I have to tell you, I thought it would take me a week. Of course, it took me 4 weeks. That's how build time works. But with that said, when I finally got the D words going back and forth and finally got the ending to not only something that was tolerable, but something I actually loved. It's my favorite part of the show now. It used to be my least favorite part, is when they get to the castle. Now it's my favorite part by far. So if you have headphones, by the way, I put some work into the audio mix, so just saying if you happen to have them. So this is it. And after I finally got that done, I sat down and watched the thing practically frame by frame and said, okay, what? Most of this stuff nobody would notice. Some of it, some people noticed, like the leather or the armor flexing. There was one particular walk that really distorted the armor on the chest, and it really bothered me. And anyway, I went through. Some of these things were very big. Some of them were very little. Some of them were tiny little things you never miss, like footsteps that weren't there, and now they're there, and it actually adds a lot. There was one thing in there that I think I'd been working on that thing for, I don't know, 4 months, 5 months before I noticed it. And it was the scene where the man and the woman are coming out of the forest, the strong men, the weak men and the crazy women, and the woman's torch isn't working. It's just had a lot of problems with that. Torch isn't working. Well, torch is working now. So I basically went through and looked at 20, 25 tiny little things I wanted to fix, and I fixed them. And so honestly, while there may be one or two extraordinarily tiny things, I'm not really sure that there are. This is the finished version. So why don't we all just kind of kick back and relax and watch this together? It's been an awful lot of work for one guy to do all of this stuff, and Zoe, again, just knocked it out of the park. But every one of these 22,700 frames or whatever was done by me. All of it, the lighting, the direction. I didn't build the models, but I animated their little fingers, and I did the sound effects and all of it. So this is what one guy who's not a professional at this can do. Imagine what we could do if we had an actual studio. Okay, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Here we go. I'm gonna take a second to get the sound down and all this stuff, and then we will roll D is for Dungeon, an American allegory, and basically here it comes.
This forest was alive once, very beautiful. The air was sweet. The leaves on these trees made an emerald canopy over the entire glen. Songbirds flitted about everywhere. Game was plentiful in all directions. A small clear stream ran down that hill to here. Right here. This very here. I first kissed a girl under that tree yonder when I was 14. Some years later, we were married. And soon God gave us two beautiful small girls. On summer days when they would splash about in the stream here, and their laughter in the sunlight was, to me, like the sounds of silver bells.
Well, I pray they are safe and well, good prince, back at thy castle.
No, brother, they're not. They're gone. All gone. Never to return. As is this forest.
What hath caused this great evil?
Not what, good Sir Knight, but rather who.
The ones who did this, these are the villains we seek?
And to that end, we must now make haste, my friend. Even now the sun retreats behind yonder hills, and we have 2 leagues yet to travel. Therefore, let us make haste.
Through the fire, then.
Aye, through the fire. 'Tis the only way I know.
Brother, thou hast brought me through unpathed waters to these undreamed shores, and yet still thou wilt not tell me of our destination. You and I are past our dancing days. I do not like this place, and would not willingly waste my time in it.
And how shall I speak of where this path leads, brother? Hell is empty, and all the devils are here.
How is it that clouds still hang on you? Why hast thou such a February face, so full of frost, of storm and cloudiness?
I am not bound to please thee with my answers, brother. Vengeance is in my heart. Death is in my hand. Blood and revenge are hammered in my head. My drops of tears I'll turn to sparks of fire. I will have revenges on them all, that all the world shall. I will do such things. What they are yet I know not, but they shall be the terrors of this earth. Here once flowed the river Lethia, which had long protected our lands. But these thrice damned murderers doth hate and fear water and will not cross over it.
Who, brother, who?
Those who may not be named. Patience. You shall see them soon enough.
You vex me greatly, good prince.
Well, be vexed then, and damn for it in the bargain. Turn thyself around if thou lack the courage or the will to finish what we have yet to begin.
Mend your speech a little, lest thou may mar thy fortunes.
Pray forgive me, my friend. Oh, full of scorpions is my mind. These sights are daggers in my eyes. There stands the borders of their realm.
Surely this is in jest. A gate with no walls. Locked, brother. The border with no walls hath a gate which is locked. What purpose can this serve?
It keeps out the honest, brother.
A kingdom with no borders, guards, or sentries, unpatrolled by armed men on horseback is no kingdom, brother. 'Tis but a wild and savage place that knows not law, nor God, nor reason, and is nothing but an invitation for banditry and cruel deprivation. If this were played upon a stage now, I would condemn it as an improbable fiction. There is movement in the forest ahead.
I see them. Pray give them none of your attention, brother. There are darker creatures we must slay this night.
What think you is their nature?
They are not but woodland snitches, brother.
Snitches. A multitude of snitches guards this place which thou namest not. Get thee back to thy impudent whispering, thou bootless, boiled-bottom blackguards! By the prickling of my thumb, something wicked this way comes.
More denizens of this god-forsaken land.
Name these flea-bitten, shard-born maggot pies as they come, so that I may know what manner of demon issues forth from this horrid and dismal realm.
Barking mad and the criminally insane, brother. They have no harm in them but themselves, let them pass.
And these?
More evil constituents of this demonic philosophy. The willfully blind. The fatally open-minded. Maiden mothers deserted by cowardly and selfish men, the gutless and the heartless, the loud and the vulgar, the weak-minded and gullible, lying rulers and absurd magistrates, those who worship the primitive.
And what be these reeky, fly-bitten deformities?
Cowards with the hearts of slaves, gluttons, drunkards, and hedonists, all appetite and no discipline. The victims of these villains yet unseen, and not their servants.
Go, get thee hence, thou wayward, yeasty imbeciles. And these pretty things, pray.
Weak men and insane women, my friend. These lands are both the home and cause of them. The weak men make the women crazy, and the crazy women make the men weak.
The devil damn thee black, thou elf-skinned, cream-faced loon! Where got's thou that goose look? Never mind, thou art forgiven. And what of this churlish, dog-hearted miscreant?
Have a care, brother. It is one of the perpetually enraged.
May I?
We are in great haste now, good Sir Knight.
This cold night will turn us all into fools and madmen. Well, my Lord Alfonso, I confess, I thought thou was embroidering thy tale, but I see now thou hast not told the 10th part of it.
Aye, if this is not hell, then hell can be seen from those towers yonder.
It is a formidable fortress.
And one that leeches the courage from thy marrow, brother. We will need the full measure of the valor that dwells in thy strong heart ere the sun rises.
Then let us to this task that thou hast set for us, good prince. 'Tis only one stone stacked upon another where the truth of it be known.
Enraged beasts blinded by hate, madmen and imbeciles, monsters, legions of snitches, all of these things issue from these gloomy walls?
I wish my horse had the speed of thy tongue. I pray thee, silence now, good Sir Knight. So long as yonder castle sleeps, then a few words are the best men.
I will ask thee a final time, brother. Name this place.
I dare not, brother. I cannot. I will not.
Then name thyself, thou great, stinking, fusty dung heap.
Brother!
I will not sneak in like a common thief under a cloak of stars, good prince.
Dividimus populum. Latin. We divide people? That makes little sense.
Thy Latin doth need burnishing, good prince. Dividibus populum doth mean we divide the people. Yet there above hangs the fiery letter D. That is the riddle we must solve. 'Tis visible for 20 leagues in all directions. It must have some meaning.
Mayhaps we may guess at what word the encircled D doth represent.
Damaged,
Dangerous,
dark,
deadly,
decadent,
decay,
deceitful,
decrepit,
defamatory,
defeatist,
defective,
defensive,
deficient,
deformed,
degenerate,
degrading,
delirious,
deluded,
demented,
demonic,
dependent,
deplorable,
depraved,
depressing,
deranged,
derogatory,
this is great sport, despairing,
despicable,
despondent,
destructive,
detestable,
detrimental,
devastating,
devious,
diabolical,
difficult,
dilapidated,
dim,
dingy,
dire,
dirty,
disaffected,
disagreeable,
disappointed,
disapproving,
disarmed,
disastrous,
discourteous,
discredited,
discriminatory,
disdainful,
diseased,
disgraceful,
disgusting,
disheartening,
dishonest,
dishonorable,
disillusioned,
disingenuous,
disinterested,
dislikable,
disloyal,
dismal,
dismissive,
disobedient,
disorganized,
disparaging,
disruptive,
dissatisfied,
disturbed,
divisive,
dogmatic,
domineering,
downhearted,
drab,
drained,
dreadful,
dreary,
droopy,
drowsy,
drunk,
dubious,
dull,
duplicitous,
dwindling.
dysfunctional.
You win.
Brother, D is for dungeon, a place where slaves and prisoners are tortured and imprisoned.
And we are here to free them, are we not?
Do you wish the honor of going first, my friend?
No, brother, I think not. After you. That'll do, pig. Yeah, that's a lot of work for one person. I'm very, very, very pleased with it. I couldn't be happier with it. Many times during the course of making this, I would send a couple of lighting scenes to like a texture guy or a modeler, people working in the business. And then many times I go, "What studio are you working for?" So I'm just doing this in my spare time. Yeah, so the whole purpose of this was to show we could deliver something, of quality, and really cool stuff happens when we get inside the castle too. So that'd be fun. So anyway, for those of you who've been here from the very first lighting test, it was, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 months ago, maybe less. or more rather. Thank you. Somebody mentioned what about the R words for Republicans? I had a lot of fun with that because it's great. Responsible, respectable, reasonable, romantic, it's a ton of them. But when I saw those, I went looking for a list of adjectives that begin with D, and when I saw how many of them were derogatory, divisive, and disgusting, I just couldn't believe my eyes. It was a blessing. Anyway, there's an awful lot of you guys in this too, because there's just constant feedback on this thing, and I'm very, very, very grateful, very pleased about all of it. Couldn't be happier with the final product. I'm very, very proud of it. Now we got to promote it and get it out there and get this other thing going. So we are going to get to political questions and stuff. And starting on Monday night, we're going to divide these two subjects up and have a wall separating these two things, an unbreachable wall between sci-fi and politics. Now, since I got this done, since I got the channel finished, and all these other things have been hanging around for quite a long time, I was able to start looking forward to what we're going to be doing next. Starting on Monday night, I have to have a little conversation with my attorney, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal. So here's some good news, and then we will move on to the politics, and that's what it'll be from now on Thursdays. So starting on Monday night, if I can figure out a way to get the agreement done, I'm going to start dispersing some of this load on the colony's backstory stuff. There's just a ton of stuff, and I'm looking for something here that'll help us put my my cogitating spectacles on here. So I had a little problem, and one of them is. And this is a blessing, by the way. Is a quick little aside. A lot of people have talked about this. People who've studied movie history, film studies, and so on. Often, in fact, usually, the shoots that are the toughest emotionally are the ones that make the best movies, and that's because there's so much back and forth and interplay. The classic example we've talked about 100 times, not going to talk about it now, but Jaws, where the shark just didn't work. He's got no movie. He's got no movie. So Spielberg has to invent things, and it turns out that the things that he invented put the shark in your mind instead of on the screen, because the shark actually looked kind of crummy. But by the time you saw him chewing up Quint, you already believed that shark. But if it had worked the way it was supposed to, it would have been But it didn't, so Spielberg got a chance to do what Spielberg does, and that's evoke emotions and scare you without showing you, which is the best kind of scare at all. So out of that kind of interplay, I had something happen similar with me on the colonies. And that is, my working shark would be if I had my own, big budget and modeling team, but I don't, which means I have to use existing assets. So I'm going to grab some examples for you. I've got you've seen the photo, the renderings of the Armstrong, which are kind of smooth and cool looking, kind of a neat looking thing. But then I realized, I really kind of want, this. These are all just grabbed from the web. That is kind of cool, and I kind of think that, I want to do these kind of things, but at the same time, I don't want to lose, I'll just throw a bunch of them up. I'm not even going to resize them. I don't want to lose the slick stuff, like this. But I do want to keep that. So how do I get away with this? In fact, here's a kind of a hybrid. How do I explain this? It was a problem that was driving me nuts, and I finally solved it, and I'm very happy with the solution. So you get the idea. Let's see if I find one more just for fun. Yeah, here you go. So this kind of stuff.
I have not seen ever. I saw what they did in The Expanse, and I got to tell you, I had a lot of problems with The Expanse. And one of my problems with The Expanse was that I didn't like the ship designs, and it was so dark. Everything in space was so dark. Now, as it turns out, Beeffire here has preemptively landed on what my actual solution was, but I actually went further than this. So how do I explain why some ships have a level deck and gravity is down, and that I've explained that away using that magnetic field thing where you wear like a magnetic suit, and the highly advanced computer thing makes you feel like gravity. So I can justify it, but how do I set it up so that I've got this and this other really kind of cool looking spacey kind of thing? And I realized, all right, now think this through here, Billy. So I did. My first thought was, okay, so what about things like this giant landers, the big quad thing, the Nostromo-looking thing? Well, those things have to go into an atmosphere, and so they can't have all of these little spindly pieces. All right, great, but what about the difference between these ships that are never going to land on a planet, and yet some are smoother looking than other ones? What's the difference? And then I finally got it, and it just made me so happy. People have suggested different manufacturers and stuff, yes, but we're talking about entire different looks, different classes. It's almost like different universes, and you got to explain this. And I realized I could. So let me just find my notes on this. Yeah. So my vision's getting worse fast. In aviation, when we give our call signs, I'm talking about general aviation now, we would give our call sign, the November number, and then the letters, and then we would add a slant. And it's been a while, actually. I'm a little embarrassed to say. I think one of them was slant uniform for GPS. So it would be, Long Easy 506 Delta Bravo, T hangers ready. November 50. It's been a long time. Long Easy 506 Delta Bravo slant uniform. We are at the T hangers ready to taxi with Tango. So these slant things that you'd put at the end of it would be a designation of what you've got on board. Slant, I'm embarrassed to say I've forgotten so many of these things. But do you have a mode C transponder? Do you have this? Do you have this? So this slant thing would tell the controllers what you had on board. And I realized that I could do that. Slant golf, is that what it is now? It sounds about right. In any event, I realized I could do that in this game, and that would allow me to classify types of ships. Not individual ships, not manufacturers, classes of ships. And I thought, does this make sense? I realized it does make sense. When you go out on the road, you don't see a vehicle. You see custom vehicles. A truck is different than a sports car, and a cement hauler is different than a gas tanker, and so on. So I decided, okay, so let's see what classes can we put them in, and if we can just kind of throw this kind of thing in there subtly, people will realize, okay, so the reason this thing looks different than this is the other one. So these are the designations I came up with. There might be some others, and these are subject to change, but nevertheless. So the ships, like the big, the one with the big fuel tanks, the thing I showed earlier, like this guy, it's a little tiny. All right, so that would be a ship that would give its call sign, and then it would call itself Slant Victor. And the Slant Victor would be the V for, everybody has their own call signs. Yes, Marusha, they have, here you mean. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. So Slant Victor is for vacuum-only ships. In other words, if you're Slant Victor, you've got centrifuges and you've got radiators and you've got tanks and you have no streamlining whatsoever. So Slant Victor is vacuum only exclusively. Slant Romeo would be the R would be for refueling. That's where I got the reason that I can have semi-streamlined ships like the Armstrong. So Slant Romeo for refueling, there's this idea about wilderness refueling, and that idea is that you're essentially burning hydrogen for your reaction mass. And you can go and buy fuel, or you can dip into the atmosphere, preferably of a gas giant. And if you make enough of these trips, you can actually suck up enough hydrogen to replenish your tanks. Visually, it's fantastic because you're basically doing a series of looping orbits that are bringing you into the very, very, very top of the atmosphere of a gas giant. So not enough to heat it to like red hot or anything, but enough to get a little bit of, very, very low pressure stuff in there. So Slant Romeo would be a ship that is a non-landing ship. It's a fully spaceborne ship, but it has basic streamlining, enough streamlining so that it can go out and refuel itself. That makes sense for the Armstrong because there's not going to be a gas station out there. So it's smooth enough to go through the several different orbits of this thing and suck up its own gas. So there was that. The giant quad things, the Nostromo-looking type things with the pivoting thrusters, those would be Slant Lima for landers. Shuttle type thing would be Slant Whiskey for winged. We talked a couple episodes ago about this really cool looking thing. I wanted it to be like a private jet, and it didn't have wings, and it didn't have, vertical thrusters. And it's like, how do I figure out how to use this? And we talked about, okay, it's magnetically captured and it's magnetically launched. It just flies into a magnetic field and it's slowed down and stopped and so on. So that'd be Slant Mike for the magnetic landing type thing. Slant Sierra would be specialized. That'd be anything, that's outside of this. Slant X-ray would be for experimental, and then Slant November for naval. So again, these are subject to change, but Slant Naval would be, or Slant November would be something with a gun on it. Dave wants to know, will the Aurora make an appearance? Yes, it will. Put too much work into that to not have it make an appearance, and it's cool. So I thought to myself, alrighty, self, if we do this, and we shall, then how detailed can we get? Now, this is the last of the Stratosphere lounges that are, bicorn. We're going to get to the politics in a minute. From now on, we'll be dividing these up. But the question is, how much detail can I put into these things? Because there's a lot of stuff out there. There's things I've seen out there online that are photoreal, and I mean really photoreal. And they're using actual physical rendering, physical textures, actual lighting, and so much of the stuff, including, I'm sorry to say, the fantastic texture on the Armstrong, it looks like a computer graphics texture. But if you were to really, really stick to your guns, how realistic could you get this thing looking? So, Unreal Engine basically substitutes complex geometry, series of vertices that are drawing a physical shape in 3D that is then lit. And the whole idea behind a game engine is, now we're going to make much simpler things and we'll put the details into the texture. We can have textures that make it appear closer and further away. We'll do all of that stuff. So that's how you get, 60 frames a second, because you've got essentially relatively simple objects with tremendous textures on them. Okay. But how much texture can you put in? I mean, how much geometry, how many vertices can you put in? Well, up until Unreal 5, and there's no other software that does this as far as I'm aware, and as far as I'm concerned, I haven't tried it yet. It's absolute black magic. I don't have the slightest idea how it's done. But nevertheless, it is apparently done. Unreal 5 features a lighting system, universal lighting system called Lumen, which basically you put one light in there and the light behaves exactly the way it would behave in the real world. You shine a flashlight on a red wall, it throws a red reflection and all the rest of it. And they've also got something called Nanite. When they did the demo for Unreal Engine 5 over a year ago, they showed a scene where there was an extremely complex statue. And then as this woman walks through this room, it turns out there's 50 of them. And the guy said something like, this scene has 1 billion vertices, and it's running at 60 frames a second. And I said to myself, that's just not possible. It can't be possible. How do they store it? Where does it go? I mean, every time you reach the limit of your RAM, and I've got 256 gigabytes of RAM on my workstation, and I'll fill that up. So I thought, all right, here's what we'll do. There are a number of modelers out there, and one of them is a guy named Chatzi, I think, on TurboSquid and CG Trader, which are the two sources for models that I use. And this guy has a lot of, he's an engineer. When he builds a little piece, it's so unbelievably realistic. It's so good that it's unbelievable. But they're very expensive because you get lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of these little tiny little details. So I thought, well, for the sake of the argument, why don't we see if we were to forget about the limitations on the number of vertices, forget about how complex the model is. Let's just assume that Nanite's going to do what Nanite is advertised to do. Then, what can I do in terms of making something realistic using geometry? So I have a few tests to show you all. It's nice to be moving out of here's another test on the Dias for Dungeon World and into tests for this. So I took a number of this guy's kitbashing things. For those of you unfamiliar with the term, it goes back to the days of like Star Wars, and may even have preceded that, but certainly by the time first Star Wars came out in 1977, the way they would get their model spaceships done, like the Millennium Falcon or any of these things, is through kitbashing. They didn't have the pieces that they needed, so they went out and bought model kits of they'd buy tanks and they'd buy cars, they'd buy airplanes, they'd buy any model kit they could, and they'd take a little piece like maybe a wheel or a hub or something, and they'd take that off of the car and they glue it on the side, and now it looks like a valve or something like that. Okay, great. So you take pieces of this kit, pieces from that kit, bash them together, and you end up with something new. Well, kit bashing is a market unto itself now. There's lots and lots of people that put out individual components for kit bashing. So I decided to get the most complex. There's only one guy out there, really. It's this guy Chatzi and everybody else. He is in a league of his own. And I thought, can I build one of these complex spaceships, one of the vacuum ships with the centrifuges and tanks and all of this stuff, using this guy's parts for kit bashing, because it's going to destroy the RAM, it's going to eat everything there is, but let's just assume Nanite works. So I said, okay, let's try that. Now I hope these play. So I built a centrifuge arm, and I rendered it. These renderings, I should point out, there are no textures on this. This is just sheer geometry and basic colors. Hopefully this will play. So this is the first thing I got out of it, if it works. Hey, there it is. So, okay. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. I could live with that for, it's an hour's work or 2 hours work or something. And then I realized that animation I just showed is falling victim to something that is so pervasive that I don't even catch it myself. But we've seen this every time we've seen a ship that's using spins for gravity, with the exception of 2001: A Space Odyssey, because that one had Arthur C. Clarke to make sure the science was right. I don't know how many times I've seen it. You've seen it too. How many times have you seen a ship going by and there's a centrifuge and there's one centrifuge just spinning around like that, right? It's just spinning. And I was talking to my friends up at X-Core, the guys that make rocket engines up in the Mojave 10 years ago, or longer now, I guess. And I told him about this going to just have this one thing spinning. And the guy said, that's not possible. So what do you mean it's not possible? I said, no, you can't have one of these things spinning. In order to have that, you'd have to have a frictionless bearing. I said, yeah, but it's counter-rotating. See, the arm is going around, but we're counter-rotating with a mechanism. He said, think that over, Bill. It's not possible. There's nothing for the stationary part to bite. Right, so if you start this centrifuge spinning this way,
the friction on the bearing is going to start to rotate the whole fuselage with it. You say, oh, we're going to put in counter rotation. We're going to rotate opposite it. Yes, but there's nothing for this. This thing is not anchored to anything. It's going to pull it around no matter what you do. And that's when I realized, oh my God, absolutely yes. You have to have counter-rotating mass. If you're going to spin a centrifuge one way, you have to have something that is of equivalent mass going in the opposite direction. I didn't know art very well, John. I don't think I did. I knew Jeff and everybody else up there. But anyway, it's not. You have to have whatever's turning one way. You have to have something of equal mass turning the other way. It doesn't have to be a ring. If you got a ring turning one way, you can have a couple of things out on poles and spin it the other way. But you got to have it. You got to have counter rotation. So I realized, okay, so that animation I just showed you is wrong. You know, play again? No, do that? No, you swine. All right, so I don't have to throw away what I've got. What I have to do is I have to change the animation. So that's what I did. So instead of it looking like, I'll just put it up again. Instead of it looking like this, rotating like this, which is, again, I'll just have it floating along doing that. Can't do it, not possible. So then I realized, no, it's actually going to look like this. That's how it's going to go, which I think is cooler, actually. So then I thought, all right, so that looks pretty good. How much detail is actually in this thing? Well, it turns out quite a bit. Already you're beginning to get the feel of it, right? You're beginning to feel it, right? This kind of, there's something about, yeah, Bart thinks I got the science backwards, but I don't think I did. The guys that I know who are space guys say that you can't do one of them. So if it turns out I'm wrong, then my life is easier, but I don't think it's possible. In any event, that's something I will research. So there was that, and I thought, okay, the nice thing about this is you've got these counter-rotating things like that, which is dramatic coming at you, but it's especially dramatic if you're standing on one of the HABs. So here's one taken from a stationary position. It's not moving relative to the HABs. It's just, this is what it looks like if you're in a spacesuit and this thing is not moving. And I think that's wicked. So for the show tonight, I did a rendering, and it's been working on it for 8 or 9 hours. And I was all ready to show it, and it looked like, oh man, it's going to finish at 5:35, 5:40, just enough time. And then I looked at it, and I realized, okay, number one, some reason or another, one of the keyframes is wrong, so they're not rotating at the same speed, but I told it to turn on. This is a junk renderer. This is a stock renderer. It's not in Unreal. This is in 3D Studio. This is just in 3D Studio. So I thought I need to see more of this, so I was not going to show it. Then I realized, no, you know what? The mistakes are part of the process, and that's what we're going to be doing on Channel 2, is we're going to be saying, oh, this is a surprise. So this thing's wacky. Just the shadows and the lighting are just spazzing out. I don't know why. They just are. But if you are willing to put that aside and look at what the geometry is doing, it's actually pretty cool. So this is the last one I've got to show you guys today. Lightning storm in space. It's just cool. And you can tell they're rotating at different speeds, but you get the idea, right? And again, no textures on these guys. These are just raw footage. So, so we can do both. Now, Quivo says, and you're right about this, Quivo. It's like, and this is an interesting compromise. Quivo says, hey, just have it look cool, Bill. The science is secondary. Here's where I am about this. This is an interesting
point. You can have both. You just have to know what you're doing. So I am going to stick to the science 100%, no magic at all, none. The only magic that I'm allowing is for these stargates. And they said wormholes are possible, but they probably evaporate in the space of, nanoseconds. I said, so you can make them. Yeah, you can make them, but it just takes a ton of energy and they collapse immediately. This idea of opening up a tube just never going to happen. Okay, but you can make them, right? Yes. So now we have an engineering problem, not a physics problem. And we're talking about 250 years in the future. That's a fair amount of engineering. So the only thing I've allowed is something that is allowed by physics. The warp drive thing, no matter how much you look at it, doesn't seem to add up. The numbers are just not there. So anyway, I did what I did, and forcing myself to look at the actual science made for just a tremendously dramatic cool. And it also means, okay, we got these lines now, and all of the storylines that spin off of me having to find a way to make the science work. So that's what we're doing. And the thing I talked about 10, 15 minutes ago about the different types of ship was a way for me to try to get a cool looking look, which is exactly right. Quibo, you want it to look cool. But the brand of this show is that the science is as close to real as we can get it. So how do we do both? And it requires thought. I mean, it's something I've been thinking about on and off for months. And then finally I sat down and started thinking about it seriously. And I realized, okay, so you got different types of vehicles doing different types of things. And the long ships with the long tanks, the spinning centrifuges, the hubs, and all that stuff looks cool. And you don't need anything else. It's cheaper. But you get something like the Armstrong, you got to be smooth enough to get an atmosphere, have level deck, and all that stuff. So there you go. So I'm able to keep my promise to myself and to the show. I'm able to justify things that look like artificial gravity. And by the way, since it's an animated show, I don't need any artificial gravity. I mean, don't really have to have it. But nevertheless, gravity's such a weak force, it seems impossible to generate. But magnetism is millions and millions of times stronger, and that's something we do every day. So, this is how good science fiction works and how good writing works too. You end up with here's an easy solution. Yeah, but that's not scientifically accurate. Well, screw it. We'll just do it anyway. Okay, let's turn on the sonar on the USS Discovery. But if you know enough about it, about the background, if you really got the science down, then you can come at it the other way. Everybody that's producing stuff out there now says, let's get it look cool, and we'll backstory as much of the science as possible. Arthur C. Clarke and Kubrick, on the other hand, in 2001, which you can see right here, did it the exact opposite way. They said, okay, instead of doing what we think looks cool and then backing it into the science, let's see what the science would tell us, and then we'll see how it looks. And when I saw 2001: A Space Odyssey, I can't tell you how groundbreaking that was. It was just drop your mouth. It was so influential that all of these ships have taken, essentially, look, all these little pieces and stuff, the little greebles that they're called, and I was talking about kitbashing, the surface of Discovery is not a smooth plane. It's all tiny little things. And that's the genius of the guys who did the special effects works on 2001. They realized that your eye is looking for detail, and the more little details you put on that, the bigger this thing kind of has to be in your own mind. By the way, the Discovery was something like, I want to say it was like 12 or 18 feet long. It was huge, huge. And the reason it had to be so huge, this is a little fun fact for movie makers out there. The exposure times on each individual frame was a couple seconds. I'm talking about the photographic exposure time. Normally you just run a camera and you get 24 frames a second. But the reason that they had to expose this so long, and the reason they needed such a big model gets you all the details. But the problem is with a big model, and you've got a camera here, the front of the vehicle will be in focus and the back will be out of focus, or vice versa. And your eyes don't work that way. If you're outside and you're looking at the Queen Mary, you see the whole thing in focus because it's actually hundreds of yards away. So you've got this problem when you're dealing with something that's 3 yards away. You want to make it look big, but the focus problem is telling your eyes that no, it's not real. So they had to do a long enough exposure because they had to stop this thing down so much that so that the whole thing was in focus the whole time. And that's why it's magnificent. It's no question. It's still the best special effects ever. Now on Monday, when we get into this, I said I was going to start the process of distributing this workload. And one of the problems, one of many, 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 many elements that need to be in this thing and need to be right is the displays. I will take a moment just to show you something here. Let me see. This will be worth the effort. So, good news and bad news. Good news is, in the same way as Kitbashing, there are also a number of After Effects plugins to produce science fiction displays, and these are universally called HUDs. Okay? Let me see if I got one on YouTube here. HUDs. And we've seen them 100 times. The first time we ever saw these things on the screen, I believe, was in Minority Report. The first time that Tom Cruise is moving stuff around there. Everybody liked it so much, so everybody used it. But there's some real problems with that. And I'll show you what these problems are. See, this is the kind of thing that is going to make this show a success. It's not only solving these kind of problems, it's kind of making these kind of comments. Perfect. Perfect. This is exactly what I'm looking for. All right, let me download this. Is it what I'm looking for? No. Let me find a better one. All right, this is good enough to get you the idea. All right, there are better versions than this, but you'll get the idea. Let me just download this real quick. So what you can buy out there, or you can buy After Effects things that make these HUDs. And I should really pick a better example than this, honestly. I'm sorry, give me 1 second. It's worth the time. So you've seen it 100 times, right? You saw it on The Expanse. So stay with me on this. So on The Expanse, you're watching The Expanse, and they've got this giant display in the middle of the room, right? And it's in the air. It's all hologram. It's a giant hologram. Okay. So you've got this hologram. Fantastic. Yeah, this will be a little bit better. Okay, and it looks cool because you are watching it from one perspective. Nobody thinks about this. If you're looking at this hologram from the other direction, all the labels are backwards. And if you've got this one of these sci-fi tropes, and I am so much going to enjoy poking holes in these things. I just can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to this. One of the tropes is that everything is always dark because Ridley Scott invented the future, and cities look like cyberpunk from Blade Runner, and the inside of science fiction is metal plates and steam vents, and it's dark because he's making a horror movie. We're going to blow all those things away. One of the things that we're going to blow away is this display convention. So in science fiction, in order to show that it's a science fiction device, not just a regular device, a science fiction device, what's the one thing that they do perpetually to show you that this little screen that they're looking at is a science fiction screen? It's not a real screen, not an old technology screen. It's a science fiction screen. How do they do that? They do it the same way every time. And the way they do it is they make it transparent, right? Oh, you can tell it's science fiction because you can see through it, right? So far, so good. Everybody with me? Fantastic. Oh, wow. Great. think about how awful that is, right? And just think about how unbearably awful that is. If you're outside and you want to check your phone for some data and you can see through it, just imagine how hard it is to read it. Not only do you specifically want something to be as opaque as possible. So this idea of, we're going to project all this stuff up in the air and it's going to be real big and it's going to move around, it's going to be science fiction. It's like, no, it's garbage. It's garbage. It's not going to happen that way. It's lazy. That's the word I'm looking for. It's lazy. So this is a very simple example. There are much more complicated examples of this and much better ones than this. I just grabbed it and it was a dead air thing. So yeah, exactly right. Dave Big Booty's got it exactly right. From Airplane 2. Sir, these lights just go back and forth. Other than that, they seem to have no purpose whatsoever. These giant, plasma tubes, they just go on and off, on and off. Or what do they do? In fact, let's talk about this. What do they do? Every time anything gets into this series, and I mean this, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time, but anything that gets into this series has to pass the what does this actually do test, right? What does it do? And if it's got things on it, like flashing plasma tubes, what do the plasma tubes do? Well, that's the energy source. Okay, so why do you have the energy source on the outside of the vehicle in glass tubes? You'd think you'd want to put that somewhere secure. Furthermore, you'd think that the radiation would kill everybody. So take the flashing glass tubes out. Yeah, but it looks science fiction-y. It looks like the cliche of science fiction. If you give people the reality, they will instantly know. Just like the Mr. Plinkett says, it's like, you may not have noticed, but your brain does. That's where I'm going with this thing, right? I'm going to show people things that they think like, well, that's not very science fiction. It's because it's real. What does this do? Somebody comes to me with a ship design or something, and it's like, well, what does it do? Well, that's no. And there's a flip side to that too. It's like, well, this is our future submarine. Okay. Where's the hatch? Where do they get into it? Well, it's all cool curvy stuff. And okay, so great, looks cool. There's an advantage to being streamlined through the water. How do you get into this thing? You're born into it. So, with that said, this is a fairly simple example of the kind of displays that you see in every computer game. Anytime you've got a bridge full of people and they're looking in the science fiction world, they see this. This is what science fiction displays of the future will look like. And I don't mean to pick on this one person. So this is a HUD. Come on. Get on with it. Do it. Okay, see how cool that is? Look how science fiction-y that is. Isn't that amazing? Wow, that's really high tech. It's got to be great. I look at something like this and I say, what is this thing trying to tell me? What's it trying to tell me? Oh, something happened. Oh, I don't know what happened, but did we have a reactor failure? It doesn't say. It just changed. Look at all this stuff. Stop with the glitches. Look at all this stuff on the side. Like I say, this is a real simple one, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. You'll look at these displays that these people are looking at, and okay, I got it. Thank you. Sorry. And what they'll see is you just see just lines of numbers. And you know who's terrible at this is the original Alien. It's just unforgivably bad. It's like, and here's all these lines of code, and it's like 9, 16, 24, 30, just these numbers just flashing. And it's like, oh, see, the computer's thinking. It's like, well, the computer may or may not be thinking, but if it is thinking, it's thinking faster than this. And why is it showing to the people? Why? Well, because it looks cool. Well, it looks cool because you're being lazy. And once again, you know who wasn't lazy? Stanley Kubrick was with a possible exception of Orson Welles, Stanley Kubrick was the most detail-oriented director ever. He was absolutely obsessive, and it made him hell to work with. My understanding is that shot of in The Shining of Jack coming up the stairs with a bat, I think they did that something like 170 times. Something like that. Okay? And that's with a Steadicam, and that thing's heavy. So, who got it right? 2001 got it right. Go back and look at that. You got 2001: A Space Odyssey. All of the display screens in that movie are perfect. They're perfect. And they're perfect because they're hand-drawn. They're hand-drawn by animators. And they're hand-drawn by animators who have some kind of science background. So you would see actual constellations. And you wouldn't be getting this whole flow of stuff. I have a friend named Brent who designs flight displays. He was one of the first designers of these electronic flight information systems. And at an air show 5 years ago, we were at Oshkosh or something, and we're looking at all these new, flight displays for experimental aircraft. And there's all this data up there. And Brent looks at it, he says, how can you possibly get any information from this cocktail party? And I thought, man, that's perfect. Perfect. That's exactly what it is, a cocktail party. Let's throw all of the ambient noise that we can up there. Let's throw all the numbers and all. And what is this display telling you? Nothing, right? Nothing. So the bad news is that all of these existing HUD templates are way, way, way over complicated, and they don't tell you anything. The good news is that those elements are there. I just need people, and it'd be nice if it weren't me, I can give them instructions and stuff. In other words, there are probably 30 of these things at least, and each one of them has 700 elements. So you're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of these little widget things doing their thing. And I'm looking at all of them. And I say that one little thing there actually looks cool. Here are some things where if it goes up, it says 70%. It goes down, it says 0. Goes up to 100, it says 100. That's a useful gauge. Okay, great. So when I talk about things like distributing the load on this thing for the colonies, one of the things I need displays. I need displays because they have to be in the scene when the scene gets rendered, and that means that you got to start on them first. And I need a lot of displays. And I need different displays for different stations. The pilot's display is going to look different than the engineer's display. The engineer's display is likely going to be a series of trees. Star Trek got that right? I mean, the Star Trek looks so primitive today, but you look at the engineering room, you look at Scotty's big board, and he's got, it's schematics. Here's a line, this thing's green, this thing's red, okay, got a problem here. So when I talk about, and I'm going to get into a lot of detail on this on Monday, I want to start the process of distributing this stuff out. I want to be able to say, this is what we're looking for here. Go have fun. And so there's things like that. In 2001: A Space Odyssey, my favorite part of the displays, the graphics are just beautiful, and they're very finely drawn, by the way. Just because guy drew it. All of their, the frames, it's fantastic. And then, 10 years later or 20 years later, you get 2010, and we've just now gotten Apple II graphics. So let's put those Apple II graphics in there, and you go from having these flat screens with these perfect displays to these curved TV things with It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. But you look at this 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I'm going to review it again. I'm going to write it down. This is one of the things I need to be able to distribute. Every single one of the displays on 2001, every one of them is color-coded and has a 3-letter identifier. One of them is HAB for HAB. One of them is NAV for navigation. One of them is, what was the one I was just thinking of? HIB for hibernation. G.K. Masterson says they turned 2010 into a movie. I don't know if that's a joke or not, but yes, they did, and I thought it was not very good. By the way, first example in 2010, the movie, one gigantic centrifuge swinging that way, 84. One gigantic and it's going to pull the Leonov the other way because there's no such thing as a frictionless barrier. It's not a great movie. And Roy Scheider plays, no, don't tell me, Dr. Haywood Floyd. Not Sterling Hayden. Whoever played Floyd in 2001, that guy was awesome. Roy Scheider just doesn't do it for me. Anyway, so when I talk about distributing things, one of the things I'm going to talk about in some detail on Monday is I want to start the process. I got to talk to the lawyer, make sure we're all clear on how this thing works in terms of contribution and credit and, and all the rest of it. But one of the things I want to distribute is I want to start working groups from you fine people and the people that you know. So I want engineers to start thinking about what would a display of the ship's systems look like. Well, you kind of need to know what they are, right? But you can help with that. You got reactor, you've got fuel, you've got engines, you've got electrical system, you've got all these other things. And I want people to start thinking about the things that they know and what they're good at so that when we get these displays actually made, we can have confidence in it, which comes back to Crimson Tide, which I've talked about so many times. On the 1MC spin-up tubes 1 through 24, 1 through 24, whatever, this is not a drill, this is the captain. And it's like, what did he say? He said what you actually would say on a nuclear boomer if you're about to launch your missiles. Nobody understood what they were saying. I did, but hardly anybody did. But it sounded real because it was. So this is the target that we're shooting for on the colonies. Is that kind of thing. I want people. This is what's going to really appeal to the science fiction nerds. Is this going to be science in this science fiction? And what I want every few moments of people watching this, I want somebody saying, "Oh, that's damn clever. That's really clever. That's exactly how it would be." That's what I'm looking for. Clever. That's clever. That's well thought out. I hate to pick on The Expanse, but The Expanse got away with the problem of gravity by having these magnetic boots. They're constantly under thrust. Okay. It's an awful lot of fuel you're carrying if you're going to burn this thing. Just a constant burn for 11 days or whatever. That's a hell of a lot of fuel, and I don't even see fuel tanks on this thing. But okay, they're making an effort. But when the gravity was off, they'd show these magnetic boots. Ka-chung, ka-chung, ka-chung. You'd see 2 shots of that, and then, okay, well, we've got the red lights on our boots. Let me put this coffee cup over here, and the coffee cup sits there, and you just, you buy it, but it's not really well thought out. And I know in my heart that if this is the visual look and the overarching brand, if that's what it looks and sounds like, then you go out and you get writers who can write stories about people. Because the trick of this is, and this is something I know, this is why I've been waiting my whole life to do this. I've just spent an hour and a half talking about all of these technical details and all of the science and all the rest of it. But when it comes time to actually shoot the pilot, that script has to be something where, and I plan to do this. I would have done it in a studio. It's probably going to end up being a Zoom call. But that script should be the kind of thing where if you had 6 actors sitting on stools in a black box theater and they're reading the script, it should be fascinating and you should be completely engaged without any of the background stuff at all. None. Zero. None. So I'm going to need a lot of areas of expertise. I need engineers to help with the displays on this. I'm pretty good with the aviation lingo. I can write most of that myself. I have a good friend who's may have recently retired, but was an active member of one of the SEAL teams for quite a long time. So when these guys are going through the room, they're going to talk like real SEALs. They're not going to talk about what Hollywood, art guys think SEALs talk like. It's gonna sound real because it is going to be real, and all of it's going to be real. I'll tell you what I do need. I don't know if anybody out there watching this has it, but if you do, I don't know if I need you to contact me yet, but keep your phone handy, keep your pager on. I need somebody who's had some time on board a naval vessel bridge. That's one thing that I don't know. I know what I want to say, and I know how I want to say it, but the language I don't have exactly right. I want to know what it sounds like. I've got a fair idea.
like on a submarine, it's like you don't say dive, dive, dive. It's like diving officer, make your depth 300 feet. 300 feet, 300 feet high. Come left to 270, that kind of thing. But that movie, what movie starred the Real Seals Act of Valor? Yeah, it was a great movie, but the acting killed it. There's one or two decent actors in there, but the guys were not actors. And this is another thing that's got to be finessed. You got real life is boring. You got to bring it up enough so that it's interesting. So it's actually not 100% real. You are bringing it up enough so that it's this. But if you bring it up too much, you get away from the reality, and so it's no longer heightened reality. Now it's just some guy who doesn't know jack about anything. And you know what? And he goes out there with his rifle and he says, "All right, guys, we're gonna have to switch rifles. Everybody, set your rifle to fully semi-automatic." That's the kind of thing that I am going to dedicate my life to avoiding. All right, everybody switch to fully semi-automatic. This is what people who don't know anything about guns say. So there. I'm going to need all of these things. We'll start parceling them out, and we'll start getting some feedback and start getting the big brains on this, and it'd be fun. It'd be really fun. Okay. Well, that was a fun little romp. So now let's do what we said we were going to do last time, and that is we're going to start with the Facebook questions, and then whether we have time to get to BillWhittle.com questions or not, I don't know, but I will tell you that this is the last Stratosphere Lounge, at least for the foreseeable future, that is going to be taking your precious political comment time and talking about goofy science fiction stuff. So this is the fork in the road. From now on, we're going to talk politics on Thursday night. We're going to talk science fiction and filmmaking and all the rest of it on Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so let's go to the Facebook page here. I'm really excited about doing this second show. I think it's going to be a blast. Oh, that was not so smart. Hang on, sorry. Yeah. Okay. I don't watch a lot of, in fact, I don't watch any content that other people are putting out there. I don't watch any of the Daily Wire stuff. I don't watch, Hannity. I don't watch any of it. It's not because I have the highest respect for all of them, but number one, it's what I think of, do all the time. I don't need to hear it again in my time off. And secondly, I don't want to be overly influenced. But I have to tell you, I watched something yesterday that I liked so much I just plain want to copy it. And it is the Daily Wire Ben Shapiro reaction videos. That is a grand idea, and he's really good in it. It's fun, and Ben really benefits from that. And so they basically find these lunatics on TikTok. That's what TikTok is for, is to bring out the lunatics. And they reaction videos. See, we're not going to the science fiction world now. Now we're going about the way that the world has changed. Things are constantly evolving in terms of what people want to watch. J.P. Spears is a guy who started out making fun of hippies and liberals, and now he is the second largest conservative commentator after Crowder. And he's hilarious. And he's very good at it. So there's that. But one of these genres that's really popular is reaction videos. And it could be as simple as, essentially, the first of these things is like an unboxing video. It's like, oh, we've got this new toy. Let's open the box. And these are 17 million views or something, right? I'm going to unbox this. And then you got a new camera, a new microphone. We're going to have an unboxing video. We're going to take it out of the box and take a look at it, hook it up. These are huge numbers these things are doing. But reaction videos are a little different than that. Reaction videos are where you queue up a media file, and then you turn the camera on yourself, and then you watch it, and then in post you put it in there
So you are seeing it for the first time, at least the ones that are any good are. And so what you're really selling is not what's in the video so much as your reaction to what's in the video. And the ones with Ben Shapiro are just brilliant. They're just brilliant. And they put a lot of post-production work into those things. Those guys have got everything just nailed down over there. They're fantastic. And they put a lot of work into those things and make a lot of really funny jokes with it. But it's the most fun I've had with Ben. Watching Ben, you still get all the insight, but you get it at semi-automatic speed instead of fully automatic speed. So I would like to do that, but that's not something I'm going to be doing right now. In any event, there we go. So we were at the, yes, we're going to get to the questions, weren't we? Yes, we were. So let's move this over here. This over here. This over here. Okay, here we go. 12 comments. And let's switch from most relevant to all comments. I just, looking at my Facebook page, I just saw right below this the post for the Fauci video, and I right angled it on Fauci and I just threw up in my mouth a little. The virtue signal we shot today has got something to say about that. So, all right, here we go. We ready? Yeah, I think we're ready. All right, here we go. Sergio Stevens says, looking forward to it. Well, here it is, Sergio, and I cannot even begin to imagine your disappointment. But thanks for the cheery words. Martin Archer, Mudd's Women in the Colonies. It was one of the best written and most iconic Star Trek episodes. It rings true because men have always been the oil rig worker, the deep sea diving welder, the construction worker, the miner, etc. Women came along afterwards in a gold rush for husbands or for fortunes that might be made as prostitutes. I'm sure you want Star Trek references and tributes all throughout the series. Mudd's Women is one of the best Frontier episodes you could reference, but leave out the Venus drug plot point. If not, then which ST episode could be reinterpreted or heavily referenced for the colonies? I would prefer to do completely original stories, but I will come back to the point you're making here, Martin. I don't want to. This is why entertainment is so appalling now. Is there's nothing new. Everything's just, I'm going to take on this or an homage to that, or I'm going to do a soft reboot of this. But your point is excellent. I'll come back to it in a second. Also here he says, also, I cannot recommend the 8 episodes of the series 1883 highly enough. I don't think I've ever heard of it. Frontier pioneers are the most challenging situations that I've ever seen depicted on screen, and more moving than you'd think it was possible in such a short series. Ask the live stream audience. Anybody seen 1883? I have never heard of it. But this is exactly the kind of thing that I'm looking for when we're talking about distributing this show and making it essentially an open source science fiction series. So 1883, perfect. Now on to Mudd's Women. Yes, this is. Everybody's saying it's awesome. So all right. So I'll check it out. This is the thing that's going to be controversial, because everything that people hate about woke values in entertainment, they hate because all of it is based upon a lie. Right? There's a Wakanda Forever is coming out, and I don't think it's going to do very well. And when it doesn't do very well, it's going to be because how racist we are. But, I'm not really particularly interested in seeing a long line of bald African women with spears as my, if I'm not hearing back from what's the name of the planet? My mind is going. The alien planet. If I lose the signal from this planet, something, and I've got a choice of sending Marines in an APC or a bunch of, black chicks with shaved heads and handheld weapons. LV, yeah, thank you. LSV 426. Was it LSV? I thought it was LV. Anyway, yeah. So, okay, make whatever you want to, but this female warrior thing's based on a lie. And I was looking at movie trailers, and in fact, I have this week's Moving Back to America is about how much of the content that's coming out now is based upon a lie. LV-426, yeah. So we lose a signal from LV-426. What should we do? Grab the bald women and give them a couple of blades and send them on out there. It's a lie. And after I saw the preview for Wakanda Forever, I saw a trailer for another movie, which is this cubed, called The Woman King. And it's about, and it's apparently about a group of female warriors in Africa taking on the Europeans in the colonial days. And it features a lot of shots of these women beating up these, Europeans who are holding rifles, and they're coming at them with machetes, and it's like, okay, so we're not going to have woman warriors. Now, this is an important distinction. I am 100% going to have the mother on this frontier thing have to grab a shotgun and do things that are going to be impressive. But she's going to do it because she has to do it. And she's not going to do it because she wants to do it. She's not going to go out there and kick ass. Somebody's there and husband's on the other side of the planet. Okay, somebody's got to go out there and defend the place, and mom's going to do it. That's true. It's true. This woman warrior thing is false. And when you see the Marines in the colonies clearing a room, it's going to be all male, and they're all going to be young male, and they're going to be fit males. And when people say, because I'm going to hear it, why aren't there any women here? The reason is because there aren't any women warriors out there. When I say warriors, I mean tip of the spear gunfighters. I have friends and respect highly respect women I know who are helicopter pilots in the military. The woman who was a damage control officer on board the USS Spruance was just blew me away with how competent she was. She was 5'1" and probably 100 pounds soaking wet, but she really knew her stuff, and I was very impressed. It's not a question of, oh, gee, I don't think women can handle this. It's a question of when you're talking about this kind of stuff, it's exclusively men. Because you have to carry people out of there sometimes, right? And they're faster and they're stronger. It just when you're talking about the tip of the spear, you can afford to be so selective. In any event, it's going to be real. So what Martin's saying here is exactly right. That's what the frontier was, and what the frontier will be is it will be extremely male heavy, male dominated, because it's going to be dangerous and uncomfortable. And as a general rule, I'm not saying there aren't any women that sign up for dangerous and uncomfortable, but I am saying that if you took a look at somebody and you put an ad in the paper and said, we've got something coming up, it's adventurous, however, it's going to be dangerous and extremely uncomfortable, I guarantee you that 95% of those applicants are going to be males. I guarantee it. So, for some reason, and just as a quick aside, because that's what the show's about, is watching me wander off get beached on the rocks of the stream of consciousness. In the comment section, Quibo says adamantium and vibranium are different, but we're the same originally. The reason that caught my eye is because I'm thinking about, okay, so I've got real world physics. That means that I've got rockets that are basically, well, they're nuclear rockets. The simplest nuclear rocket takes a uranium core. It's what they built at Nervi. Basically, this cylinder of uranium, all these holes in it, and you run liquid hydrogen through it, and the uranium heats up the liquid hydrogen, and out comes the expansion of gas out the other end, and it has a very high specific impulse, which means that you get a lot of energy per pound of fuel. That's an engineering problem. So all you have to do is make that hotter and hotter and hotter, and you get more and more and more efficiency. So far, so good. There was something called the Alien's Handbook. It was put out by an individual guy, British guy, and it was
a manual for the Space Marines, written entirely in character. It's one of my favorite pieces of science fiction ever. It is so damn well written. It's so good. But he was talking about the drive for the Sulaco. And he wasn't commenting on it. It was like, here's an engineering manual on how the J293s or whatever power the Sulaco. And Quiba says, I want to do 3D space. I want to see 3D printers in space, Bill. I want to see 3D printers everywhere. Yes, that's exactly what I mean. I want to see this thing just building these structures. Anyway, so in this handbook, the reaction mass was diamond dust. It was industrial diamonds that were ground so fine, like a flour almost, so fine that you could treat them as a liquid and pump them. Diamond dust, because he wanted as much energy out of the thing as possible. I thought, that's fantastic. That's just really, really good. And that led me to a thought, like, okay, if it turns out that you really going to take something and heat it up, and you want the reaction of it, it seems to me you would want the most dense material you could get. That seems to me to be the best way to go. I might be wrong about that, but that seems logical. So I said, okay, so what would that be? Would that be lead, uranium? It's osmium. Once again, here we are, right? It's not unobtainium, and God bless you, Gene, and it's not dilithium. Osmium is an actual element. It is the densest material. There are a couple of unstable transuranium elements that are denser than osmium, but their half-life is a second or two or a couple of milliseconds. So osmium. So people say, well, osmium, what do you mean? We've got to tank up our osmium. For everyday travel, for routine travel, you're just going to use hydrogen. Hydrogen's everywhere. Just dip into the atmosphere, suck some up. Hydrogen, boom. But if you've got either a military ship or something that has to go interstellar at sublight speeds, you're going to not care about the price. You're going to care about performance, and when you care about performance, you're going to have an osmium drive. You're going to have osmium tanks, because that carries the most momentum out of the engine. And that's a perfect example of the kind of thing I'm talking about, right? Is it unobtainium? No. Is it dilithium? No. Is it what? No, it's osmium. Osmium? Google it. Osmium. The densest element, the densest stable element in the periodic chart. Yes, and Mobile Moto points out, unobtainium was always a joke. And for Cameron to use that was that, and using that papyrus font for Avatar was just plain horrible, unforced errors. So anyway, atomic number 76. Let me put on my cogitating spectacles. Yes. Well, that's a handy coincidence, isn't it? We're talking about the telling the story of America in the future. I'm going to make it as far into the future to the year as it is in the past. So osmium is element 76. That's kind of got a cool thing to it. It might be very expensive. I know gold was up on the list in terms of density, but osmium, if it's valuable, you just manufacture it. Fire Ueko says, I was the one that hated Avatar. I have to tell you, Fire Ueko, at least with this crowd, I'd be much more impressed if you were the only person that actually liked Avatar. Avatar is just one of the worst films ever. It's beautiful, there's no question. But it's just one of the worst films ever. And there's a trailer out now for Avatar 2, The Way of Water. And these authentic natives are, you see, the humans, which apparently have been kicked out of the last one, now we're just building stuff, and now we've got Avatar warriors out there because we're evil. You see, we're come to get the unobtainium, and iridium is almost as dense. Exactly. See, now we're having an actual scientific conversation based on a throwaway line that somebody uses in a science fiction show. This is how it works. This is how Star Trek produced. That's how this turned into this, right? See how it works? That's how it works. That's what inspires people. You see it when you're a child, you're 7 or 8 years old, and you want to do it, so you do. Okay, so
And so back to the Muds women thing. That is a really, really interesting dynamic, that frontier dynamic. The first people out there are going to be men, and they're not only going to be men, they're going to be loners. They're going to be weird men. They're going to be like DiCaprio's character in The Revenant, which is a terrific movie I like very much. They're going to be like trappers and scouts and stuff. And then it's going to follow pretty much a wave of exclusively strong young men who are going to build the things, like going to build the cabins, and we're going to build this. And once the actual housing is in place, then the first women will start to arrive, and they will start to humanize this place, start to turn it into a place for humans to live in instead of for bachelors to live in. And that's a tough thing. There's a line that I heard many, many years ago. An American woman was asked what it's like to be in Alaska, because the men outnumbered the women in Alaska at least 20, 30 years ago by 3-1 or something. They asked this woman, what's it like to be a woman in Alaska, meaning with all the excess men around? And she said, well, the odds are good, but the goods are odd. And that's the story of the frontier, if you're a woman, right? The odds are good, but the goods are odd. These are not romantic devils. But, again, this is what good storytelling is. When I was doing America's Forgotten Heroes, the first one I did was John Paul Jones. Second one I did was Frank Luke. So Frank Luke was a badass, just a killing machine, right? And when I'm looking at his childhood, it turns out he's like an all-star fullback. Great, that makes sense. And he got into fistfights in the mines because he was working in the mines in Arizona, and that makes sense. And all of this stuff is making sense. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he decides he wants to make some money. So instead of opening a bar or a brothel, do you know what this tough guy did? Well, if you saw the episode, you know. He opened a dance studio. He opened a dance studio because he had lived with the miners, and the miners were so desperate for, thank you, Infidel, the miners were so desperate for companionship that they were willing to take dancing lessons to improve their chances of finding a wife. And Frank Luke, this kid who's beaten up miners underground, just beating them up, prize fighter, bare knuckle prize fighter, Frank Luke opens a dancing hall, and Frank Luke gets into a dress and dances with these men to teach them how to dance so that they have a better chance of attracting a wife. That is the kind of story that I think I would love to tell. All the science and all the background stuff is just picture framing. That is a fantastically cool story. Fantastically cool story. And the goods are odd. I mean, the odds are good and the goods are odd is a good storyline. What do you do with that? How do you feel if you're a woman? You're going to go out there into this lawless place, right? Well, first of all, if you're going to go out into this lawless place, you're not going to be putting men down because there's no 911 to call. You're going to be respectful and you're going to be nice, and you're looking for a respectful man who's going to treat you well. And all of a sudden, we're back to reality. We're back to reality. I think I mentioned this last week when we were doing Right Angles for last week. Scott had a show and said, what does victory look like? If conservatism completely wins, what does it look like? And he said, do you have an idea, Bill, or is it just kind of like now, except without those people? And I said, no, that's it. The colonies is going to show us what life is like without those people, without the Karens, without the lunatics, without all the politicians, the regulators. It's going to show what life is like without those people, because those people don't go out and do dangerous and uncomfortable things. They try to take the money from the people that do go out and do dangerous and uncomfortable things. And that's what the frontier story is about, especially the frontier story. What is life like without those people? I went to Texas for Thanksgiving the year before I met Natasha, and I did an afterburner on this. During my entire 3 days there wasn't an hour that went by when I didn't say either to myself or out loud, "You're allowed to do this?" "Yeah."
You're allowed to just go out back and shoot skeet over the river in your backyard? Of course. They're not going to have like a SWAT helicopter overhead and to it? No. And there's a house right there. Of course there's a house where they shoot skeet too. And we put a bonfire. We're going to have a bonfire here. You just have a bonfire in your backyard. They let you do that. They let you do that. They let you do that. That's how pervasive this cult is. And that's what the Frontier family is going to be saying. They're going to say, we're allowed to do that? Yeah. Where are you going to go? Well, where can we go? You can go anywhere you want to. It's none of my business. I don't have time. I don't have time for this. Just go. Was there a speed limit or something? The speed limit is, yes, how fast can you drive without killing anybody? That's the speed limit. Now get out of my way. No one has seen this, guys. And this is really ultimately how you win voters, is you show them a world that they've never seen before, and it's got all of this cool glitz, but you make them think about it. You show somebody driving a car with the top down, listening to music, and you show them what it's like to have automobile freedom. You know, you take a guy who's grown up in a city and he's had to get to work in these travel pods, you know, these publicly owned, boxy, slow, self-driving pods, and you put him in the seat of a convertible '66 Stingray, and you go down this highway at high speed, and you watch the expression on his face. That's how it will work. So you're absolutely right about that, Martin. These are the kind of questions you have to ask yourself. When I was asking myself what I know that the Frontier father is going to be a hydrologist. He's on Earth in Los Angeles. He's working for a company, and he's not even got an engineering degree. He's just got a lot of experience with high pressure water systems, and he's convinced that he's self-taught. He's convinced that he can make a living finding water, drilling wells, and plumbing it for people out there. He can make enough money finding permanent water supplies rather than having to get shipped in, even though you recycle all of it. So that's what he's going to do. But he's going to get out there, and he's grown up in LA, and he's constantly, for the first time, going to be saying, "We can do that? Yeah, just go." Well, you know, what about this? I don't really have a license or anything. What's a license? Stop wasting my time. You know, how will we know if the guy's any good if he doesn't have a license? Well, if he's not good at what he does, he'll be frozen solid outside of his hab because he'll starve to death. And if he's got a line outside, the chances are he's pretty good at what he does. See how simple it is? Stop wasting my time. That's the tone, and that's what it's going to be like. And I'm telling you, 2 generations are going to really, really dig this. He's a water witch, yes, exactly. As the term I'm going to use is a water boy, and I'm going to give him a funny name for this. I've got a group of free traders, and this is the story of how they build up their company. It's a separate storyline than the Frontier storyline, and they start out in a relatively small ship, and the relatively small ship's called the Mary Sue. So that's it. This is the dynamic. And when we talk about these Stargate lines, I want to do research on how did railroads, how did it develop? I know the basics. I know that the government funded a couple of these railroad lines, and then some guy basically started his own private line, which was so much more competitive that it put the government lines out of business. And all of this stuff really happened. So if it really happened once, it's going to happen again. How do container ships? What's the protocol for container ships coming into and out of Port of Los Angeles? Because when you've got really cool spaceships, you always see them heading towards the planet. Okay, well then what happens? Well, we go into orbit. Sweet. Then what? Well, then a miracle happens and we find ourselves on the planet's surface. Yeah, okay, well, if you're bringing in cargo, you've got to put it someplace. And if you've got a vacuum-only ship, right, that's not atmospheric capable, then you have to take your cargo to someplace, unload the cargo, get paid for it, And then that guy is going to sell the cargo to a guy who's got an atmospheric vehicle, and that guy's going to take it down to the surface, and then somebody on the surface is going to put it in a truck, and this is how it goes. So all of this stuff. Risha says, Bill, how will you handle the character religions and references to our own era's pop culture, like how people enjoy Rena fairies? There are not going to be any aliens in this. There'll be plenty of aliens. There just won't be any intelligent aliens. The more I look, the more convinced I become that intelligent life is so unlikely. We talked about this last time, I think, last episode. So even if there are other intelligent starfaring species out there, the idea that their tech level would be exactly the same as ours, just exactly the same. We got phasers and the Klingons got disruptors. And the Romulans, look at that. Here's another civilization that we happen to meet at exactly the right time. And we're all three equal. If we encounter another intelligent species out there, they're either going to be dressed in animal skins or they're going to be invisible and do with us whatever they will. So, okay, so if you take out aliens, so you no longer have, and Star Citizen is just terrible. This is so unoriginal. Chris Roberts, whatever you want to say about the game, is not a deep guy in terms of originality. He just steals stuff. So in Star Citizen, as an example, you've got the turtle people, you've got the bird people, you've got the reptile people, and in Traveler there were the wolf people and there were the lion people, and they're bipeds, they're humanoid. They had a head here and arms, but they might have different number of fingers, and I'm just tired of it. I'm not going to do it. So okay, great. Now we get back to the fact that this is not a lecture. It's a drama. So you have to have conflict. So who are you fighting? You have to have a villain. Well, on some level, you're fighting the Chinese because that's who we're fighting today. And they're doing the same thing in space that they're doing here. They're basically not playing by the rules. Okay? And you've got your own government that you're rebelling against. And in this case, it's going to be a government that is just nothing but bureaucracy and nothing but spending and nothing but taxes. And it's time to go. It's time to go. We got to go. But you also want, if you're doing a science fiction show, you want alienness. And I've got it somewhere on a CD, but man, nearly 20 years ago, 15, 17 years ago, I saw a rendering of a creature, had human eyes, and it had like a hole here for the nose, and it looked human, but it was also at the same time absolutely terrifying. It was just really horrifying. And I realized, okay, so that's it. So to answer the question in the comment section, we'll get back to Facebook eventually. In the future, I'm going to, subject to change, but I've been thinking about this a lot. There's basically going to be three branches of humanity, not just the nationalities and not just the mega corporations, three different kinds of people. There's going to be stock humans, which is the people we're going to follow. There are going to be the cybernetic humans that are going to have all of these technological improvements that are believable. And then there's going to be the genetic guys, the ones that have decided that they are going to engineer themselves to the environment rather than the other way around. And those people are going to be freaky, freaky, freaky. Just as a thought, to give you an idea of the lines I'm thinking here, is if you there was a novel out called the Chemically Pure Warriors, I think, and it was about a group of soldiers who had to go down on everywhere they went down. They had to wear a spacesuit because they had been born in space, lived and died in space. They had no natural immunity to anything. So if you have a group of people that decide, we're all out here looking for a planet, but rather than finding a planet like Earth, wouldn't it just be easier to make us like living in small metal containers? Wouldn't that be easier? So they start messing around with their own genetics, and they breed themselves into creatures. And as an example, you don't really need a nose if you live in an air-conditioned
tube, right? This is designed to trap dirt particles. It's designed to keep the rain out. It's designed to produce a mucous membrane that protects you against bacteria. But if you live in a sterile environment, you don't need a nose. You just have a hole in your face, or you have something else there, right? One of the things that Arthur C. Clarke wrote about was he talked about a guy up there in orbit who had lost his legs, and he was actually much more capable than everybody else. He said, look, the legs are just like 40% of my body weight that don't do me any good. So if you take that to its logical conclusion, you'll find humans who have arms here, and then down where their legs will be, there will be another set of arms. Pretty simple genetically. And so now you get to have body horror. And body horror is really cool. That's what Alien and Aliens essentially is, oh my God, this thing is repulsive. Yeah, we'll have repulsive antagonists in this. We'll have antagonists that look terrifying, not just with not these aliens have brow ridges this way, and the other aliens have a brow ridge here. Otherwise, they look exactly like anybody down in a casting studio. So, anybody come up with an idea for a mutation that's possible? Why? If you can answer the why, I'll give you the technology is practically there. Assume that you could do anything genetically. What's the weirdest, grossest, creepiest thing you can think of? And why would somebody do that? And if they do that, what are their objectives now? Now you start to get the power of this crowdsourced idea. Okay, moving on. Jason Hatfield. Hey, hail Bill. Hail Jason. You mentioned in a previous episode about a highly elliptical orbit for the planet for your settlers in your colonies series. In Dan Abnett's first 40K Eisenhorn book, Xenos, his adventure starts out on such a place. The planet is so far out in the solar system, the inhabitants have to hibernate in special chambers until the planet warms back up again. Worth the read if you have the time. Okay, thanks, Jason. Let's move on to the next question. I've read every one of the 60-plus novels in the Horus Heresy thing. I've read all of the Siege of Terror books. Dan Abnett wrote the first 40K novel I ever saw. And Dan Abnett is in a class by himself. He is uniquely talented. And the reason I'm feeling blue over your question, Jason, is because I read Xenos about a week before I decided I wanted to do this. I just stole it. That's just that simple. I just stole it. Now, fortunately, I'm aware of highly elliptical orbits, and I had been thinking about the idea about a planet that had temperature extremes. But when I read about this, I said, yeah. Now here's another great example of the thing that we talked about earlier with Quibo. It's like, just make it look cool. Don't worry about the science. Well, so this is a perfect example. So to see if I could get this to work, a couple weeks ago, I went into Space Engine, and I took the Earth, and I did this first in Universe Sandbox. I took the Earth, and I replaced the G-type star with an F-type star, which is higher level of radiation, bigger habitable zone, and I started playing around with the orbits. I took what I learned in Space Engine, moved it into, took what I learned in Universe Sandbox, moved it into Space Engine, got the basics in Universe. So in Space Engine, I basically took an Earth-like planet, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. How do you balance the science and how do you balance the story? And it took me probably 2 hours. And it took me, and the pilot of Lost in Space, bless you, Quibo, because that's where I first saw the idea. That's when I first saw it. It wasn't Abnett. It was that first season of Lost in Space, which was so incredible, and they're in the chariot, and it's going to get, I can't remember if it's going to get hotter or colder, but they have to leave the Jupiter 2 and get in the chariot and travel across an ocean. That's the first time I saw it. So everybody steals from everybody else. I took this planet, and the software is doing the calculations for surface temperature. It's got calculations for the greenhouse effect on the atmosphere, how thick the atmosphere is. All of this stuff's all factored in. I give it a hotter star, and then I start playing around with the minimum and the maximum. What's the aphelion? What's the perihelion? What's the
aphelion, what's the perihelion? And I can adjust these things. And as I make these adjustments, as I move the perihelion closer to the sun, it's going to get hotter there. And if it turns out that the planet doesn't get cold enough, then I'll move the far end of the orbit further out, and it gets more eccentric, more elliptical. And I just kept running it. And then finally, I got it where I want it. I thought about bringing that in today, but just doing a quick recording of it. But this is a perfect example of how you square this circle. I know what I want. I wanted a planet that got killer cold, cold enough to kill you, but not unsurvivably cold if you just, stepped out. It's not 250 degrees below zero, but much colder than Earth. And on the inside of its orbit, I wanted it to be hot, but hotter than LA in the summertime, right? I mean, I've been here when it's been 126 degrees. That was pretty toasty. I've been in Arizona when it was about that temperature. It was warm, right? But that's not science fiction. So, in my head, now forgive me for this transgression, and I'll have to atone for it later, but I decided to use Celsius for this because it's actually more useful when it comes to this kind of thing. And I kept going back and forth with Fahrenheit. So the coldest temperature recorded on Earth, I want to say, I think it's 165 below zero, something like that. So I need a planet that gets down to 180, 190 degrees below zero Fahrenheit for a while. And on the hot side, I wanted it to get to about 160 Fahrenheit. Right? If you go to 212 or above, the water boils off. At 160, 170, it evaporates very, very quickly. And so I'm just playing with the parameters and I'm running it. And as I'm changing these things, I'm looking at how cold does this planet get and how hot does it get? It gets cold enough, but it doesn't get hot enough. I'll move the perihelion in a little bit. And then I finally got it so that the cold temperatures were right where I wanted them, and the hot temperatures were right where I wanted them, and that gave me an orbit, and that orbit gave me in 3 digits of how many astronomical units away from this is this orbit, and what is the eccentricity to 2 digits of accuracy. And so now I've got the science and I've got what I want. And yes, exactly right. Bart points out that boiling also has to do with the water temperature, and this is another kind of thing that I'd like to crowdsource out. If you've got this world and there's a significant amount of water on the world because it's got relatively high gravity, higher than Earth, I'm thinking, because that'll be unpleasant. Not enough to make it crazy, but if it's 1.1 G, 1.2 Gs, you don't feel good. Eventually you get much stronger, but at first it's just like, oh God, you're carrying all this weight around. So the planet's got enough gravity to hold on to an atmosphere, and I'm thinking there's a fair amount of water on this planet, but the period where water is liquid in terms of its total year orbit, and I want to say the year was six years, something like that, to do this orbit. The windows for liquid water are very narrow. On a highly elliptical orbit, one of the Kepler's laws of planetary motion, see what I mean by having a little idea of what you're talking about, is that over any period of time, if you take 20 days of an orbit, those 20 days will always cover the same total area. What that essentially means is when you're close to the sun, the planet moves faster, that much area. When you're far away from the sun, it moves slower, and it's that much area, but it's longer. That's one of the laws of planetary motion. So what that basically means is if you've got a planet like this, you've got a world that looks like this. They're going to get there. This is an artistic decision on my part. They're going to get there just as it starts getting cold. So when they get off the boat, it's going to be cold, but it's going to be reasonably cold. It's going to be 40 degrees, maybe 30, 35, 40 degrees. Uncomfortably cold, but nothing worse than a winter in any place other than LA or Florida.
but they come as the planet is heading out. And as it heads out, it slows down, which means that the winter, if it's got a 6-year orbit, the winter is probably 4 years of that. And then there's approximately a year on either side or less, probably a couple months, where things are enjoyable and pleasant. And then there's a short period of maybe several months where it is unlivably hot. So that's it. And then when you're watching the orbit, now you get really cool stuff to work with. Because it's freezing cold, then it warms up, and then as this thing starts heading in towards the sun, suddenly it starts to warm up faster. And then comes the first day when you can go outside without, a pressure suit. And then comes the first day when you can go outside in sleeves and t-shirt. Then comes a couple of days or maybe a week where you can sit out and get some sun and just relax. It's warm, it's beautiful. And then it starts to get warmer. Now it's Los Angeles in August. Now it's Phoenix in August. Now it is too hot to survive. We got to go lock in again. So, okay. So this is doing a lot of the lifting for telling the story. And they get on this boat just as it's starting to get cold. And that means that their first, I probably get them there a little warmer than what I said. Maybe it's, I don't know, 50 or something. That means they're getting there and they've got a couple of weeks, maybe a month, to figure out how to live on this place. They've got, they've got a rover. It's broken, but it's functional. And they've got about a month or two where every day it gets more uncomfortable. And they have to figure out how they're going to survive on this thing, and they have to make some friends real quick. And then you get a 3-year winter, so that most of this planet time, it's frozen. And then somewhere around season 3 or so, it's not frozen. And then suddenly this world that you've gotten to know for three seasons worth of episodes, now all of a sudden this frozen place is suddenly completely just waterfalls of liquid. Waterfalls of all of this permanently locked up ice is now melting in huge quantities, and it's melting fast because the temperature is going up very, very, very rapidly. When this thing is coming in on the perihelion, that temperature does this. It's down here for the winter, and then it goes woo, and then it goes right back down again like that. But during that close approach, there's a little window going in where it's not only comfortable, it's pleasant. Is the planet lifeless? No, it's not, but we'll talk about that in a second. And then coming out the other way, as it starts cooling down, it's comfortable. And around you go. So this is a great example of how getting the science right tells you enough about the story so that it doesn't write itself. You still have to add a human story, but it provides you with interesting fodder and interesting visuals. So if you see 2-3 episodes of this as a frozen planet, and then suddenly it's not, and then suddenly these frozen cliffs that you've seen are just these enormous waterfalls, and then all of a sudden, and this is a question I wanted to ask the hive mind. I can give you the temperature things. I really like the idea that all of this water essentially evaporates. When I say instantaneously, I mean in the course of a couple of days, where this planet suddenly hits, because it's on the perihelion, it's moving real fast. It's getting hotter very, very, very fast. And it seems to me that if you had a planet with a lot of water on it, most of the time the water's frozen, then it's liquid, then going to come a point when the temperature gets high enough that this huge quantity of water is going to evaporate at the same time. And that would be cool. Would that be just like a steam? Seems like that's what it would be like. Now you're not losing the water. It's not going to space. You got a magnetic field and you've got enough gravity to hold on the atmosphere. This is just a cycle. So you got all this water suddenly, it goes from frozen to liquid. Now you got these huge oceans, which last for a couple weeks, and then poof. Now you've got 100% humidity, and it's 175 degrees outside, and I've lived in Florida, so I don't need to know why to do that.
Would this planet have a moon? Asked Dave Big Booty. And again, here we go. Here's the science. I would love to have a moon, but I say no. And the reason I say no is because the only way to explain this orbit is for this to be a captured planet, for this to be a captured planet. This is not uncommon. There's a lot of highly elliptical orbits of asteroids and so on in our solar system. Most of the asteroids are in nearly circular orbits. And if you look at the asteroids in the solar system, you'll see that the huge quantity of them, just a giant cloud that's rotating, they formed with the solar system. But a significant number of them are highly inclined, highly eccentric, and those guys are captured bodies. And the only way to explain this planet is for it to be a captured body. It be captured billions of years ago, but it's got a very, very high eccentricity. It's an elongated orbit, and it's got a very high inclination. So Dave says, wouldn't any planetary body's elliptical orbit eventually circularize? It would eventually, but depending on how elliptical it is in the beginning, this process could take, billions of years. And this is the part of the story, this is the part of the adventure that is fun. As long as the science is correct, you can say, well, the planet would be circularized in 750 million years. I say, okay, so this thing was captured 200 million years ago. Ta-da! But just handing the weather off to you bright people, right? What would it look like? I love the idea, and I'm going to stick with this one way or another. Half of this planet, it's a big planet. It's a little bit bigger than Earth, and Earth is a big planet, despite what Neil deGrasse Tyson may say. So, for dramatic purposes, I thought, what is the most alien landscape I can do? What can I do in science fiction that hasn't been seen before? Well, I've seen ice planets before, and I've seen jungle planets before. In fact, in The Empire Strikes Back, I saw both of them within about a 10-minute span of each other. So I know what ice planets look like. I know what jungle planets look like. I want to know. What haven't we seen? We've seen planets that look like Mars. We've seen planets that look like the Moon, and this is it's a strange choice. But if you commit to the choice, it opens up things that are never ever done before. I realized the only terrain that I've never seen in science fiction is a planet with no terrain. That's the only thing I've never seen. I've never seen a planet with no terrain. And if it turns out that you've got a planet that's got a whole lot of water and it's constantly in a state of flux in terms of gas, liquid, solid, liquid, gas, I can imagine a world where there are essentially you think of it as a water world with an ocean that surrounds the whole planet to a depth of 4 feet. I can imagine a world where that would, I want half of the planet to be the Giddy Gap, right? Half of the planet is absolutely featureless. And Space Engine allows you to land on these planets. Pretty basic, but it's still pretty cool. And I have done that a couple times. And when you're on a planet that is absolutely flat, now I'm not going to keep them there, but I am going to have them go across it, and it's going to take a while. It's actually terrifying. I think I mentioned this last time we talked about this, that the German soldiers, when they invaded Russia in 41, the German soldiers actually kind of went a little nuts because they'd be on their trains or they'd be in their trucks, and they would go for day after day after day for months, and the terrain wouldn't change. It just wouldn't change. That's how huge these steppes were out in Russia. So yeah. Now, if you got a situation like this, my feeling is, okay, so you're gonna put down a house and you're gonna prepare yourself for the cold. That's where 80% of your year is going to be cold and on the margins relatively comfortable. And then the question becomes, what do you do for the 5 months or 7 months when it's unsurvivably hot? And I think the answer is, I think you move. And so that also, see, this is a process I'm trying to explain to you guys. This is how thinking things through provides you with interesting
background to make good stories about. If you've got a planet like this orbit, then everybody's got their houses where they want them for whatever reason that they want them. But when the summer comes, there's only one place that provides a little relief, and that's the poles. So you've got the whole planet is dispersed across the surface of the planet, and most of the time they're hanging around the equator, because most of the time this planet's very, very cold. They want to be on the warmest part of a cold planet. But when this thing starts to come around in its orbit, this belt of population, it's not a lot of people, but it's enough, suddenly all of them concentrate on the poles. And now you go from a world where your nearest neighbor is 40 miles away to one where your nearest neighbor is 40 yards away. And that's cool. It's cool to have a place up on the pole where all of a sudden these rovers are coming in and these temporary habs. Everybody's got like a summer house there. It's still going to be hotter than survivable, but it's going to be, you get 20, 30 degrees down, something like that. Who was it asked that? GK Master, what's the axial tilt? There is no axial tilt on this. It's 3 degrees. The seasons are not caused by the tilt. They're caused by the orbit. So you get the idea, right? So that's actually, how it would work. And so Jason, just between you and me, and all of you watching, and all of you who may be fans of this in the future, let's not mention Dan Abnett or Xenos or any of that other stuff. Let's just go back to the first episodes of Lost in Space where they get in the chariot, and we'll all be happy. First time chat. Library Dennison. Bill, I keep imagining the potential for fan fiction in your universe. You're building an infinite potential for storyline growth, but in a way that forces fans to deal with real science and real humanity. What a way to teach about life. Thank you very much, Library. And I have to tell you, that's kind of comment I would remember anyway, but for the first comment, that's really deeply appreciated. Yes, this is the plan, right? I mean, I'm not going to be around forever. I'd like to say I started this when I was 30, but I'm not. I'm starting when I'm 63, right? So I would like to think that this thing is going to go on after I'm not here. And if you build this thing, this universe, then it will eventually take care of itself. And you know what? I just had a real insight. The colonies will follow the same pattern that Star Trek and Star Wars went, which is the same pattern of civilization. You start off with a highly ordered system where the rules are the rules. And over time, all of the storylines essentially get written, and then over time, the rules get laxer and less stringent until finally the thing just dissolves into chaos and anarchy. The journey from Star Trek original series in 66 to Picard or Discovery is the journey of entropy. It gets less and less and less interesting because you keep opening up what it can do. So you get worse and worse writers, and that's just the way it's going to go, but hopefully somebody will shoot it in the head before it gets to that point. But that's kind of weird, because that is exactly, I never thought about that before, but watching Star Trek and Star Wars is like watching how civilizations decay. There might be something worth thinking about in that. I'll take a look at that. All right, here we go. Eric Blake, hail Vectron, Bill Whittle, hello. Eric, hail Vectron, and hail Eric. By Vectron's golden claw, may we win every single seat open in November. I agree. Here's the question on that. You mentioned that the betting pool suddenly isn't as solid as it was before on whether or not we'll win both houses of Congress. So when would you say things changed? Was it the alleged inflation reduction bill getting passed? That strikes me as the most likely case, because much as we like to talk about Americans waking up, truth is a lot of folks like to go by what mainstream media tells them, whether we like it or not. Yes, this thing scares me more than anything that is on the horizon out there now. I was feeling so confident. I have a great deal of confidence in these betting pools for the reason that we talked about in the weight of the ox. I'm not getting into that again. But last time I checked it, it was something like 87% chance of taking the House and 64%, 65% chance of taking the Senate. And then
somebody said the numbers are changing, and I went back and looked at it, and it scared the daylights out of me. And now let's look at it again to see if it's worse or better. Here we go. I'm reluctant to do this because I have a lot of confidence in this as a predictive thing, much more than polls. Let's see what it says. That's not good. So it continues to narrow. Now we have a 73% chance of taking the House, and here's the graph for it. You can see the widest point was back in June or July. Can I get this thing, please? All right, I'll do. You want to be that way? I'll be this way. I'll just do it this way. So here's what the House looks like now, according to the betting pools. And I don't know what caused this. This is the question you're asking. I don't know the answer to it. But here's the House. Did that not work? Let's try it again. Did that not work? You swine. Hang on. Okay. Here's the odds on the House. And you can see it is getting worse fast. We're still looking good in the House, but it's getting worse fast. What happened at the end of July? And now the Senate, this is the one, because I was sure we were going to do a sweep, and it was reasonable to be sure. Okay, God. Our chance of taking the Senate has gone down 2.6% in the last day. This is bad news. Now there's still plenty of time for them to screw it up and so on, but this really, really worries me. So there's the Senate. There's the House. Here comes the Senate. Look at that. Look at that. That's insane. Bart's treasurer says that the debt forgiveness thing should kick that back in our favor. Yeah, I think the FBI raid had a lot to do with that. I really do. And I think that's why the FBI did the raid. Yeah, that's really, really, really disturbing. Okay, well, that's what happens when you get overconfident. So let's see what we can do and do what we can. We'll find out. Eric says, what happened through June and July to change everything? I don't know. I honestly don't. I don't know. I can't think of anything. Yeah, people are going to vote Dem because of that. I can't think of anything that really explains it. Did we just get bombed again? Hey, we got bombed. Hey, everybody, how are you? Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. We're talking science fiction and TV and all the other stuff. But lately, just in the last couple of minutes, we've been looking at the betting pools. And for those of you who just showed up, hi, everybody. Look at what's happened to the numbers. This is really, really, really disturbing. For those of you who just this second showed up, welcome. Here's the... I've talked about these betting pools. Historically, these things provide much, much, much more accurate information than polls because people have money in it. There's skin in the game, and you have a huge, huge sample of people. So back in end of June and July, you could see that we had an 87% chance of taking the House, and now it's down to 73% and dropping. And that's alarming, but this one is terrifying. There's the Senate. Look at what's happened since end of July. What's caused that? I think OG Man says it's gas prices. I think that's a lot of it. Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. I think as gas prices go down, people think, oh, okay, so they got this under control. They don't have it under control, and there it goes. So anyway, and Marisha points out, for those of you who are new here, we've been doing the Stratosphere Lounge show for, almost 10 years now, something like that. And mostly it's been politics, but lately we've been doing an awful lot of science fiction stuff because that's kind of where we're going. We've opened up a second channel, and on Monday nights at 6 o'clock, we're going to be doing a stream that is nothing but pop culture, science fiction, screenwriting, how to make movies in Unreal, all that stuff. So if you're here for the first time and you want to come back on Monday night at 6, we'll be looking for you. We're going through the questions on Facebook here, so that's where we were when you came in. It's good to see you. It's always nice to have one of these giant rushes, and at first I didn't know what the hell was going on. I was frightened and confused, but I eventually recovered what's left of my sanity. Here we go, back to the questions. So these are the Facebook questions for the week. Moving on. Oh, bring it back to all of them. Dave Olson is next. Hey, Bill, we're both old enough to remember when the big climate scare was global cooling. Then came the long, hot summer of 1988, and before you could say Oceania has always been at war with East Asia, it became global warming. If you look at a graph of actual temperatures of the last 12,000 years, it looks like the profile of a roller coaster that I'd love to ride, but not one upon which I'd like to base government energy policy or commerce policy. It's becoming clear that human influence on the climate is somewhere between minuscule and negligible. Where do we start to undo 30 years of eco-propaganda, and when will this week's Moving Back to America be released? I guess you were there for the recording of that, Dave, because this week's Moving Back to America is called Go Save Something Else. I'm not talking about... I'm not going to argue about what the temperatures are doing. That's not what I'm doing in that particular article. What I'm saying is they are telling us that carbon levels are, last time I checked, 417 parts per million. And if it gets to 450, then it's game over. People genuinely believe that the Earth is going to die and that everything's over, and that the people are worried for the lives of their children if this carbon dioxide level gets to 450 or something like that. And all I do in this video is say, hey, here's some science fact, okay? I'm not going to get into the argument about what's happening to temperatures now, but I will tell you that it is beyond dispute that 60 to 80 million years ago, middle of the Cretaceous period, the carbon dioxide parts per million weren't 450, they weren't 500. The carbon dioxide levels 80 million years ago were between 2 and 3,000 parts per million. 2 and 3,000 parts per million. And sea levels were about 200-300 feet higher. That's not something I'm looking forward to or want, but the center of America, which is now just a plain of grass, was an inland ocean with all kinds of life, and then the carbon dioxide levels dropped and everything froze and everything died. If you're looking at it from that side, getting colder is bad. You want all the SUVs you possibly can to keep it warm. So the argument I'm making is not even a global warming argument. It's the argument about how every single movie, we've been talking about science fiction all night, every single science fiction movie out there now, and the ones that are coming and the ones that I've already seen, exactly the same in every single one of them. We have to go to this planet. Why? Well, because we've killed the Earth. Have we? Yes, we've killed the Earth because we're so awful, because of our horrible capitalism and our this and that. We've killed the Earth, and some of these science fiction stories are about the Earth fighting back. You know, yes, we've done it. We've finally done it. We've killed the Earth. We've done it. We've done it. We've done it. We're evil. You know. Meaning Western people are evil because we, have antibiotics and air conditioning, and so therefore we're killing the planet. And this is the thing that keeps kind of going on. Hang on. Political Animals, we're talking about the betting pools, says, do you think it's possible that the betting pools have swung because many Trump candidates winning their primaries, the establishment will never support them, making them look weaker in the betting pools? That could be true. I don't know. Let's remember that those betting pools are based upon the entire, I'm betting my money on this from across the entire population. So that doesn't mean, if you look at just conservatives, I think that the enthusiasm has gone up. So it's not perfect, but in any event, I still don't like it. So I talk about that. That's a historical fact. And at the same exact location, if you put a stop sign down in the middle of the country, 80 million years ago,
carbon dioxide levels are 2,000, 3,000 parts per million. Temperature is 10 degrees centigrade warmer. That's some number warmer in real measurement. And you've got an inland ocean where Kansas used to be 80 million years ago. 80,000 years ago, you've got 2 miles of ice. Carbon dioxide levels are now down to about 160 parts per million. And if it gets much lower than that, then plants can no longer survive. And if the plants die, the feedback mechanism goes. So, snowball Earth is the thing to be worried about. The more carbon dioxide there is in the atmosphere, the better plants grow. And the more plants grow, and the easier they grow, and the more they not only grow faster, they grow with, they need less water, and they need less nitrogen, less fertilizer. So as the carbon dioxide levels go up, the planet gets greener. The greener the planet gets, the more plants there are, putting out the oxygen, so it starts to help itself. They say that, it's that there's this whole global warming terrorization has been this idea. This is the point I'm trying to make, right? I'm not arguing about temperatures. We've been sold the idea that we are now doing something, we're going someplace that the Earth has never been before. And they'll say, this is the warmest temperatures that we've recorded in 12,000 years. And some of them will say, it's the warmest it's been in 800,000 years, which is 1% of 1% of the total lifetime of the Earth. The Earth has had carbon dioxide levels of 3,000 parts per million, and we've had carbon dioxide levels of 160 parts per million, and we weren't responsible for any of that because we weren't here. And my point is not whether or not we're affecting the climate. My point is this idea that we're going to kill the planet is absolute, totally, completely garbage. And so I don't just stay on the climate. I said, let's take another example. When I was a kid, I was told that nuclear war would not only, vaporize me, but would be the end of life on Earth. How many times have you heard that, right? If you grew up in the Cold War like I did, if the bombs start dropping, that's it. The planet is over. Every single thing in the world is going to die. Okay. I did a little bit of math because I can add. The largest nuclear explosion ever performed on Earth, man-made nuclear explosion, was Tsar Bomba. It was a Russian hydrogen weapon that they detonated high in the Arctic Circle. Tsar Bomba was the biggest bomb we've ever made. It was a 50 megaton bomb. That's a big bomb. The Chicxulub impact, which killed the dinosaurs. I'm not saying that's a good date. I'm just trying to make a point. Chicxulub impact, when it hit the Yucatan 60 million years ago, something like that, released as much energy as, how many Tsar Bombas do you think that asteroid impact released? Not how many megatons, how many Tsar Bombas do you think Chicxulub generated? 1,000? 2,000? 5 million? Chicxulub released as much energy as 200 billion Tsar Bombas. 200 billion Tsar Bombas. And while that was not a good day, and I'm not saying I want to see that happen, we lost 2/3 of the species on Earth. And if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't be here. In other words, you can hit the Earth with 200 billion of the biggest nuclear weapons ever made. Not 20,000, not 20 million, not 20 billion, 200 billion of them, and you will now still not be able to eliminate life on Earth. So relax, right? Just relax. You're really getting hysterical about things that you don't have to get hysterical about. I did the episode based on the fact that 1,000 scientists signed a paper that said that the alarmism is uncalled for. They didn't say it's not happening. They just said there is no crisis. There is no existential crisis. It's all a lie. If it gets warmer, it gets warmer, and here's what's going to happen. But this point of no return where we reach runaway greenhouse effect, it just doesn't happen. Because if it did,
If it was going to happen, it would have happened already, you see? This is my point. If the Earth can go from 2,000, 3,000, it was 3,000. If you go from 3,000 parts per million CO2 down to 160 without us being here, then whatever we are contributing in terms of carbon, is it 20 parts per million? Is it 100? Okay, no one's talking about 100. They're talking about a difference of 20 or 30 parts per million. Make it 200. It doesn't matter. We have been there by a factor of 10, and the Earth does its thing, right? That's the point I'm trying to make, and that's the point that they can't refute. They will try to drag you down and say, well, you're a science denier and blah, blah, blah. I'm not denying anything. I have my questions about the way this data is recovered, but my argument is independent of that. I don't care. Maybe you're exactly right. Maybe your worst case scenario is exactly right. Maybe. Let's say it is. If it is, you're still looking at 1/20th of the CO2 that was in the atmosphere 80 million years ago, and Earth was filled with life then. Okay? So, there you go. Eric Blake. Eric, you know what? I'm sorry, buddy. I'm gonna just have to do new comments, and I think that's true for Martin Archer because it's already pushing 3 hours, and I'm feeling it. Did I get a question from you already, Mark? Yes, I did. So I'm just going to do the new ones. Kent Neighborgall. Hi, Kent. One aspect of frontier women then and now is that they're quick to grab a blade to take care of things like snakes and so on. This may be a topic we've already covered, but we'll see. My grandmother killed many with a garden hoe, and my girlfriend's mom in the Philippines routinely kills cobras and so on, even though she's very old and looks like you could knock her over with a feather. We just got a video of her beating a large crab that got into the house out by beating it with a board. By the time she finally gets it out of the room, legs are flying off. I love your girlfriend's grandmother already, or whoever it is. And that's only because I can't remember. I got a memory of a goldfish. By the time it gets, legs are flying off, a good background arc may be that the women going from jumping on chairs to popping aliens with blades like swatting flies after a few years on the frontier. Yes. Yes. The point of showing the frontier in the colonies is to show people what you should be worried about, is to show people what is a genuine threat versus what is I'm going to have a nervous breakdown because I got the almond milk instead of the soy milk that I asked for. That's basically it. And things like grandmothers, chopping up snakes with rakes and hoes is fantastic. I think that's what life has been for humanity. We are in this weird, freaky, weird period where we haven't had to go chop out snakes with machetes. It's the first time in history we haven't had to do that, ever, right? Ever. And so now we've got all these people looking around. Oh my God, you're worrying about things that you are considering to be existential threats because there's nothing real to worry about. And so when you hear these SJWs saying, well, it was a literal assault, it was literally a physical assault when he didn't use the right pronouns with me, that's a person who's never been assaulted, right? Because if you had been physically assaulted, if somebody had beaten you up, you would not say something like that. If you'd actually been beaten up and somebody had smashed your face into the concrete and you had broken noses and all the bones in your eyes, you had 15 reconstructive surgeries. Next time somebody didn't use the correct pronouns with you, you may say it annoyed you, but you won't say it's exactly the same as a physical assault, which is what they're saying now. This is the world that we live in. This is the weirdness of the world that we live in. Language is violence. No, it's not. Violence is violence, and you haven't been subjected to violence. That's how you can say something that's stupid, right? That's how you can say something that's stupid. If you get subjected to violence, and I profoundly hope that you do not, but if you do, then you will know that you are using hyperbolic language in order to amp up your social score by showing what a great victim you are. Yeah, John Pershing's got it. This is a person who's never been punched in the nose. Bill Burr is brilliant, right? He's just brilliant. And he comes from a really unique place. He's married to a black woman, and it's
and your instinct is to say, okay, so he can get away with saying the true things that he says because he's got that inoculation. He can say, how can I be racist if I'm married to a black woman? I don't think it's that. I think it's that by being married to a black woman, he has seen both sides of the story often enough to know. And when Bill Burr talks about women, when he talks about the things about women, he's talking about the things about his wife. Not about his black wife, about his wife, about things that all women have in common. And Bill Burr gets more and more and more and more brilliant every time he comes out. I actually think that Bill Burr has the best take on our society of anybody I know. Because Bill Burr understands that there are differences between men and women, and there are differences between black and white people. And he is fair about it, but he doesn't pretend that they don't exist. That's the woke conceit. There is no such thing as this. Of course there is. Of course there is. He'll make fun of this side, then he'll make fun of the other side. And a classic example is, it's women are like, they're like little they just never stop. And then you bounce them off. Okay, that's true. That's how it is. But Bill Barr will also say, my wife just acts like she's perfect and stuff, and I'm killing it. I'm crushing it. I'm doing a great job. The only thing she's got against me really is my personality. Honestly, if it weren't for that, then I'd be winning across the board. That's true. That's true. And that's why he's funny, because it's the truth. All right, now, I think that's the last of the questions, and I'm going to talk about something related to this, Kent. So thanks for that question. So I think Bill Burr is amazing. Now, I'll just close with this. I should probably throw a link to it if I can. I probably can. I can find it. I'll tell you somebody else who I respect enormously, and that is Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle is also telling the truth. And when somebody is telling the truth, that's one thing. And when they're telling, I know this is a strange thing to say, when they're telling the truth honestly, then that's even better. Yeah, Bart's Treasures is great. I agree with Bill Burr's got a segment on why men make more than women. They don't make more than women. You can't hire an associate manager for $36,000 a year for men, but $23,000 for a woman if it's the same job. It's illegal. It's been illegal for decades. But but he says, why we make more money? It's because if I happen to find myself on a luxury liner and it starts to go down, you get to go in the lifeboat and the kids get to go in the lifeboat and I have to stand here. That's why it's $1 an hour surcharge, he said. Perfect. Let me go on to close the show with this. So I was listening to some of Dave Chappelle's new stuff, and Chappelle was talking about the trans thing and so on and so forth, and he's telling the truth. But the next thing in the queue in YouTube was from an earlier Chappelle, and it was Dave Chappelle talking for 17 minutes, and he didn't tell any jokes during that 17-minute period, and that's the most remarkable thing I've seen in quite a long time. Dave Chappelle is sitting on a stool. I think he's smoking a cigarette in this one, and he's talking about what happened to him with the Chappelle Show. And he's not pulling any punches. Basically, he's saying that he signed a contract because his agents advised him to, and that meant that he didn't own any of the Chappelle Show. He didn't own any of it. And when he's recording this, he's saying, I don't own any of it. I don't get a penny from it, right? Because I signed this contract that was 40 pages long on the advice of somebody who's supposed to be watching out for him. They weren't. And he goes on and on and on about it. He talks about people stealing from him. He talks about people stealing his jokes. He talks about just... He talks about a game of three-card Monte and how he tried to say this is all fake. And the guy said, the guy who was running it practically threatened to beat him up. Said, "Don't ever get between a man and his meal ticket." And Chappelle has a 17-minute thing where he tells the truth about the entertainment business. That's simple. I've been in the entertainment business for 35 years now. I'm not active in it, but I've floated around it. And for 20 years, I was an editor in Hollywood. And when he talks about the entertainment business, it is the most riveting, powerful, moving 17 minutes I've seen in a long, long time. Yeah, I'm going to censor it here because I gave it some thought. Chappelle has a line. He says, they've been doing this to artists from the beginning. He said it's very much like the Me Too movement. That's been going on from the beginning too. This using women as props and pawing them. And here's the deal: you want to be in the movie, and see downstairs. And he had a line, and I'm going to really weaken the line only because I don't want to repeat it verbatim. But he's pretending he's talking to the Me Too movement, and he says, "You don't like the way they fornicate. I don't like the way they eat." And I thought, oh my God, the way they eat, man, Dave, that's exactly right. The way they eat. So this thing was recorded a couple years ago, and Chappelle says at the end of this, he says, "Look, I'm not calling for a boycott or anything like that of a network. There are plenty of other shows on that network. Those people work hard and they want to get paid too." He says, "But as a favor to me, could you just boycott me? Could you just me? Don't hurt anybody else. Could you boycott me? Could you not watch the Chappelle Show? Because they stole it from me. And it's not fair. It's not right. It may be legal, but it's not right." There's this huge round of applause. And then after that was over, I thought, my God, the power of this. And then I did a little more research on it the next day, and I found out, this was a couple years ago. And when he did that, when that got out, they gave him his money. They were so humiliated by it that they actually did what they should have done in the beginning. And I don't know if they gave him all of it, but they gave him a reasonable share of his show. Chappelle was so pissed off about how they were treating him that he walked away from $50 million. That's what the final offer to keep him on Comedy Central was, which I think was Viacom. He said, $50 million I walked away from because I thought it was wrong. And I was like, dude, I would love to, I'd love to count you as a friend. I'm just proud to be the same countryman as you. 100%, yes. I'm a conservative and I'm a capitalist, and I believe in free market and I believe in all this stuff. I also personally believe that if you sign a contract, then you're responsible for the contract, right? This is what being an adult is. With all of that said, what they did to him may have been legal, but it was wrong. It was wrong. He was making fortunes for people, and they had tricked him out of it. He talked about this game of three-card Monte because he was watching. He walked up on this. It's a street game, right? This is on the streets of New York. It's this sleight of hand kind of thing. They sometimes do it with, like, you hide a nut under a cup or something and you guess where it is, and you always will be wrong because it's not under any of those. You think, well, it's under this one, it's under that one. No, it's not under any of them. When you pick the nut or the cup that this ball is hiding under, he opens it up and shows, nope, there's nothing there, and there's nothing here, and it's here. But it was never there. It's all sleight of hand. He puts it there as he turns it over. There is no way to win that game because when those three things are laid out, there is no ball under any of those things. That's why you can't win. And he pointed out this, it took me a while to get the point he was making, but he told the story in the middle, and he said, so I went up, there was this game of three-card Monte, and I'm looking at this, and everybody is like cheering on, and somebody just won like a big hunk of money, Somebody, oh my God, this guy just won, $400 or whatever. Big money for him at the time. So he goes up and decides, I'm going to play, right? So he goes up and he plays, and he puts some money down there and so on, and they do this thing and he said, I took all the money I had, which was money. He had a girlfriend coming over. I think he said, I got a hot Dominican chick coming over, so I'm going to have to entertain her for a weekend in New York on $80, but I thought I just saw some guy walk away with a win. How hard can it be? I'm going to put the $80 down on the game of three-card Monte, and then I'll have $160 or whatever. So he was standing in line, and everybody's cheering, and then he plays the game, and he loses. And now he's got no money. And he stands back and watches this. And then he realizes the people who have been cheering and the people that won the money are all part of the scam. They're all in on it. That's when he got angry. When he realized that the reason he decided to play was because he saw somebody win. That person didn't win. That was part of the setup to get Chappelle's money. And all these people cheering him on were also part of it. They were in on it too. And that's when he got angry. And he got so angry that the next guy who came up, he started screaming, "Hey man, the whole thing's a scam. They're all in on it, every one of them." That's when the guy running the thing said to him, "Don't make me hurt you. Don't get between a man and his meal ticket." So what Chappelle's point was, it took me a while to put it together, but Chappelle's point was, the reason that I don't own any of the Chappelle show is because the lawyers who were supposed to be protecting me allowed me to sign a contract that I didn't understand and I couldn't understand, and he's right about that. It is not, these end user agreements are not, they're designed to be unreadable and unintelligible. But what Chappelle said was, it was only after I realized that they'd taken my entire show and I hadn't gotten anything. I'd been ripped off exactly like at the 3-card Monte thing, and for the same reason, everybody was in on it, meaning the negotiators on the Comedy Central side and the negotiators on the Chappelle side, because they got paid up front. So it's not like Maurice says always read your contracts before you sign them. It's not that he didn't read them. It's just that his agent or his attorney let him down, either intentionally or not. Doesn't matter, And so he kept saying, so the contract said I had to do this, the contract said I had to do that, the contract, because I signed it. And to his credit, Chappelle, at no point Chappelle says that it was wrong. At no point does Chappelle say I should be allowed to get out of the contract. What Chappelle is saying is, I signed a contract and I have to follow the consequences of signing the contract. So he's not getting out of signing the contract. He's just saying that the contract was written in such a way as to be deceptive, because what they're doing is evil. They're taking all of his stuff. He doesn't even get to keep the name. He said, I can't even go someplace and do the show on YouTube. I can't call it the Chappelle Show because they own that. And so I thought, wow, I'm going to link to it. If you really, really want to understand what show business is like, you need to listen to this, and not just because of what he says, but because of how he says it. When you hear the anger and the pain in his voice that he had to go through for years and years and years of dealing with this evil, 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 evil system, it, for me, was really, really tremendous. And I'll put a link to that below. And like Bill Burr, I think I'd like to hang with Dave Chappelle. I don't care what his politics are. I've heard Bill Burr's a liberal. I find that hard to believe, but in any event, okay, whatever. Man, so he did this special, and it shamed the people into giving him some of his show back. Shamed them into it. And he said, look, I'm the only guy with the balls to talk about what really goes on here. So let me tell you what happened to me. And here are some names. I don't think he named individual executives, but he named Comedy Central, he named Viacom. It's just very powerful. So anyway. I'm going to do one more just because I see it. It's Eric Blake's question, and just because we talked about it last week, and this is it. Eric Blake, live long and prosper, says, what a live long and prosper image of Eric Blake. This question I wrote up a couple of episodes ago for fairly obvious reasons. I got to say, your passion about Jack the Ripper inspired me to buy the Cutting Point book myself. I'm holding it in my hands as you read this now. I don't know what the rest of the question is going to be, but I'd been interested in Jack the Ripper my whole life, and then I'd read this book about explaining how it was he solved the case. It's no question he solved the case, and all you have to do is read it to know he solved the case. And I talked about it on a Stratosphere Lounge a couple of weeks ago when I did some of the AI art that I'd done by typing in Jack the Ripper and other things, and here's what the computer's generating. And then I heard from Krister Holmgren, who's the author of the book. He wrote me, and I wrote him back. We exchanged a bunch of emails. And I need to get back to him. So, anyway, Anyway, in honor of the Jack the Ripper theme of the longest TSL ever, that was a 4-hour show, which of the two following iconic never identified murderers would you most want to investigate next? So Eric's read the book and he's come to the same conclusion I have. And there's, I found out about the theory because I saw a documentary called, I think it was Jack the Ripper, The Missing Evidence. And when the writer of this book that this documentary was based on, and this is an open and shut, it's ironclad case. It makes everything else look ridiculous. It's like you hear all the evidence that when I wrote Chris, I said, your case reminds me very much of, because he's getting a lot of pushback. Your case reminds me very much of the Shakespeare identity case. I heard the case for Shakespeare being written by Edward de Vere, 16th Earl of Oxford, and it sounded very compelling to me. And I thought for about a week, wow, what a gross historical tragedy. Well, at least now justice has been done. Now I'm going to recognize that Shakespeare was written not by William of Stratford, but by Edward de Vere. And then I did something which I think most people should do, and that is maybe I should hear the other side of the argument. So then I read a book saying, here's why Shakespeare wrote Shakespeare. And after about 7 pages, I realized, of course he did. In order to sell the De Vere theory, you have to leave out so much stuff. And there are plenty of blockers in that theory, impossible things. There's nothing blocking William of Stratford. So imagine my surprise when I found out that the works of William Shakespeare were written by a guy named William Shakespeare. And in an email to Christer, who wrote this book, making the case for Jack the Ripper being Charles Lechmere, a carman and stuff, it's airtight. He's the only guy who's on the scene. His route to and from work is where all the murders happened, on that line within 10 yards of his nightly walk. So it's just excellent, and the documentary's really good. When I wrote him back, I said, I have to tell you, when I saw the thing pop up in YouTube, the Jack the Ripper, the missing evidence, I very nearly passed on it. I remember having this reaction of, oh, okay, another one. Here's another one of the special evidence that's going to show that, it was, and I wrote to Christopher, I said, he says in his book that there's been 300 plus candidates for Jack the Ripper. And I said, okay, Christopher, I looked at the outline of the video before I watched it. I thought, now he's going to make the case that Jack the Ripper was really Mark Twain or Florence Nightingale or something like that. But no, he makes a rock solid case. So Eric says, would you rather know who the Zodiac or the Black Dahlia murder is? Zodiac killer has not been found. The Black Dahlia murder is a famous case of a woman who was found cut in half, cleanly cut in half, and the body parts arranged, and she was a failed actress, and okay. My honest answer, Eric, is I don't really care about either one of those. I'm convinced that this guy and his friend in England, Edward, I don't want to get his name wrong. I will close with a story. It's a personal story that he told me. He didn't tell me to keep it confidential, so I'm just going to keep it the Stratosphere Lounge show. But like I said, he told me about it, and of all of the Jack the Ripper story, this is the most amazing part. Give me 1 second. This is a true story, and it blew my mind. So there's a channel out there, it's got 2,000 subscribers, called The House of Lechmere. And it's with a guy out there, what's his name? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Ed, now I have to get it right because I don't want to embarrass him. Let me find his name here. Hang on 1 second. I'm going to go back to the mail here. Okay, prepare to have your minds blown. Now, I'm going to get most of this right. It's possible I get one or two details wrong, but in any event, let me get this guy's name. Where is he? Sorry. Come on. Ed Snup or something. Where'd it go? I'm sorry about this, but this is something I just need to get right. Edward Stowe. Okay, so this is Edward Stowe's channel called The House of Lechmere. It's a YouTube channel, and Edward Stowe is a British researcher. So let me tell you the story. This will be our outro for the night. So, people have been working on the Jack the Ripper case since Jack the Ripper, and Christer had been researching it. He's I think he's Danish, he's Scandinavian, might be Swedish. He'd been researching it for a long time. So here's the backstory. One person was the first person to discover Polly Nichols, the first of the canonical murders. There was a witness there who was the first person to discover it, and that witness disappeared into history. And once he started looking at this person, it got more and more suspicious. So this character's name in the inquest was named Charles Cross. And they went looking for Charles Cross. Researchers spent the last 100 years trying to find Charles Cross because he was the only person who was over a victim when the police arrived, or when another witness arrived. So if we can find out who Charles Cross is, we can maybe figure out who this guy was. But they couldn't find anything on Charles Cross. Nothing. There was nothing on Charles Cross. So, hold on to your hats here. Hang on one second. One last little note here. Sorry. So Edward Stowe is working on this, and Edward Stowe has a researcher, a woman, and these two haven't met each other yet, but they're both interested in this character Charles Cross. So in England, in London, you've got Edward Stowe and this woman friend of his who's a researcher. I should get her name too. You would think that'd be the right thing to do, wouldn't it? Her name was Sue. Okay, with me so far? All right, here we go. This is pretty mind-blowing. So Edward and Sue have been working on who is Charles Cross, because they know that if they can find out who Charles Cross is, they can maybe get this down, because he's the only guy who's been reported at the scene. He just disappeared. So they'd gotten to know each other. They'd been in London and they'd done the tour, and they're both got the same interest in the same suspect. So they split up, go back to their homes. Some time passes, maybe a year or two or more. And some third-party researcher discovers that Charles Cross was a pseudonym used by a guy named Charles Lechmere. And Lechmere has literally 100 signatures. His record goes back all the way, and they find out that Lechmere lived at this location, which was along the route, and every single thing of the thing makes perfect sense that it was Charles Lechmere, and we couldn't find him for 100 and whatever years because he'd gone by a pseudonym, and we didn't know what it was. But somebody figured out it was Charles Lechmere. They found an address that Charles Cross had listed, and it turns out a guy named Charles Lechmere listed there, and so anyway, they found him. Listen to this, though. So Christer gets on the phone and calls Edward Stowe. He says, "Edward, you won't believe this. We found out who Charles Cross is. His real name is Lechmere." And Edward says, "Okay." And then Edward calls his co-researcher named Sue, gets her on the phone. He says, "Sue, we've had the breakthrough we've been waiting for our entire career. Okay, we know who Charles Cross is." She says, "Really? What's his last name?" And it says, "His last name is Lechmere." And Sue says, That's my last name. He says, yes, I know. The researcher who'd been working with Edward Stowe trying to find the identity of Jack the Ripper was Jack the Ripper's great-granddaughter. What do you think about that? So Krister comes over to London, and Krister says, and Ed Stowe says, hey, Krister, got something to show you. So the three of them get together again in a pub, and Sue says, Krister, got something you might be interested in. Yeah, what's this? She says, it's just a family album of me. So this is me as a kid, and this is my dad, and this is my dad with his dad, and here's a picture of my dad's dad. And my dad's dad is Charles Lechmere. Here's a photograph of Jack the Ripper. And when Krister told me the story in the email, he said, like all this sound in the room, because I asked him, how did you feel after researching for 30 years? How did you feel when you finally saw a photograph of this guy? And so he told me the story. And all of this stuff just, he said the room just faded away. He just kind of went into this kind of almost like a trance. You know, we talked about this, and he said, I don't know what to ascribe this to. And I said, I know exactly where you are with this. My head tells me it's a coincidence. My heart tells me that it's not. And I said, you know, I don't know how else to describe this. I'll just take a shot at it. I said, maybe, we know when we look at the quantum universe that everything is probabilities. It's all just dice rolls, trillions of them at any given instant, right? Maybe justice was trying to find its way through this labyrinth of dice rolls of randomness and found a pathway through all of these possible pachinko ball outcomes and found and the force of justice and good found its way to the truth, found its way to get out. It's about the best. It's about the best explanation I can come up with, because it seems like a heck of a coincidence, really. But can you imagine? I mean, I told you what Krister thought, and I'm sure Ed had a feeling about it. But what do you do if you've been working on this problem for 20 years, and you get a phone call and you find out we found the guy's last name? Yeah, what was it? His last name was Whittle. Really? Wow, that's a coincidence. Wait a minute. My great-grandfather was named Charles Whittle. And you find out it's true. And then here's a picture in my family album that I've been looking at on and off. It's hundreds of pictures or whatever, and it's like, oh, this old guy here is your great-great-grandfather. Oh, well, that was nice to know. Yeah. Well, we happened to catch the picture of the guy you've been searching for. And the guy you've been searching for, not only do you have his name, his face has been in your family album on your dresser counter for the last 20 years. While you've been searching every archive in the world, every possible archive to find out who this Charles Cross is. And it turned out that his name and frickin' photograph was in your bedroom the whole time. What do you think about that? I think that's amazing. And Eric says, are these personal intrigues why Jack the Ripper captures the imagination so much more than Zodiac or the Dahlia murder? Yes. Jack the Ripper didn't just kill 5 people. He was also the Thames torso murderer. He probably killed at least 11 and might have gone on doing it for quite a long time. But in any event, he makes a very good case for that too. It's airtight as far as I'm concerned. But these are the kind of things that really have to really leave you asking some very hard questions. We talked about this a couple episodes on the unlikeliness of life on Earth and probability and chance and stuff. Yes, it is obviously it's possible that this is a coincidence. No question about that. But it's such a long shot that you really start having to ask yourself, is this in fact the most likely, explanation? And I never followed up with him about it. And I certainly hope he doesn't have a problem with me telling it
like I said, there was nothing in there that he said you need to keep this under your hat. But it made me realize, well, why didn't you put this in the documentary? I didn't ask him this. I'm just asking it out loud now. This is the first thought I had when I saw it. And I don't know the answer to why he didn't put it in the book or the documentary, but I suspect the reason is because if he had, no one would have believed him. No one would have believed his entire case because of that. They would just say, okay, so now we get it, right? So this is a kind of plan for you to make the case for this guy who's this researcher's great-great-grandfather. I suspect that's why he didn't. And personally, I think he made exactly the right decision. But of all the things about Jack the Ripper, and I know a lot of things about Jack the Ripper, that is by far the most astonishing. It's funny how history goes downstream, how one little rock in a river can, divide the river downstream if it's in the right place. When the first of these dismembered bodies or mutilated bodies were found, I think it was one of the police officers said, whoever did this didn't just hack this body up. They have some very deep anatomical knowledge. Maybe it was a doctor or something. And at that instant, this is my speculation, but at that instant, something went click. And what went click was, and this I did tell him, the reason that the Ripperologists hate him so much and are trying to pull him down was because he showed that Jack the Ripper was a working man. He was a delivery guy. And for 100 and some years now, 140 years now, people have been sitting in their studies and libraries trying to figure out who this person was. And when that first report said he was likely a doctor, every image of Jack the Ripper downstream of that one offhanded comment shows Jack the Ripper as a gentleman. Every picture you've ever seen of Jack the Ripper is a tall man with a top hat, cape, medical bag, and a knife. And all of this comes downstream from one policeman saying he certainly had some kind of anatomical knowledge, probably a doctor. If he'd said probably a butcher, he'd be closer to the truth because doctors don't dismember people as a general rule. What he was really looking for was this. They would say that these joints had been expertly severed. That somebody really knew what they were doing, just made these right cuts and cut the organ out with one stroke, that kind of thing. And so if he'd said a butcher, we might have caught Jack the Ripper immediately because this guy was delivering meat, among other things. But he said a doctor. And so everybody's head went to gentlemen. And we know what gentlemen look like. And so we started looking at gentlemen, royal family, and all of these other people, and all these other suspects, right? Okay? And now we're on the thing. I said to Krister, I said, what you're really experiencing here is not just that you've shot down their meal ticket because they believe it's this guy or that guy or whatever. You have done something. This, once again, is precisely the same dynamic as the Shakespeare case. The people who are worshippers of Shakespeare as an artist could not accept the fact that this kind of genius could come from a working man. They couldn't accept it, right? William Shakespeare was known to be an astute businessman who took such good care of his money that he was one of the partners in building the Globe Theater. He was the only person in the entire company who knew what he was doing with money. He had been a merchant and a trader and all these other things. He was good with money. And the idea that a working man wrote this stuff for money was emotionally unacceptable to the intellectuals who've been so obsessed with Shakespeare as a transcendental being. So it had to be Francis Bacon, or it had to be the 16th Earl of Oxford, because only an aristocrat could write something this profound. There is the elitism that's built into all of the cases of people
who try to make the case that Shakespeare didn't write it. How could it be Shakespeare? William of Stratford was he was a wool merchant, and you're saying he wrote this for money? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. He wrote it for money. Yes, it's his job. It's what he did for a living. How could he possibly know about pirates in Italy and stuff? Well, because he would listen to sailors talking, and he read books on Italy. Well, he couldn't have just come up from his imagination. Yeah, actually could have. So it was the elitism that took them off of the obvious case and started trying to find somebody who had the emotional weight necessary to be Shakespeare. It's exactly what happened with the Jack the Ripper case. When I wrote back to Christopher about this, I said, these people are angry at you because you have shown them that the person they've spent 140 years looking for was just a regular murderer and not a criminal mastermind who buried the clues to his identity so deeply that only the smartest people could figure him out. That's what Ripperology is all about. That's what the establishment is all about. This belief that Jack the Ripper was a gentleman and a criminal genius. He was Moriarty. This is exactly how they feel. He was Moriarty. He was a mastermind. He just disappeared into the night. Nobody could find him. Nobody knew. How come nobody saw him? Well, because they were looking. The postman always rings twice, right? It was the butler. It was they didn't find him because he was in plain sight. It's obvious. It was just another person on the street. But what's driving the emotional hatred towards Christopher and his theory is that no, he wasn't a criminal mastermind who is going to validate your intelligence because you are the person who figured out the fact that if you take the first letter of all of the addresses of the prostitutes and then you multiply it times pi, you know, that's what you poked a hole in. You poked a hole in their elitism, and they don't like it. So there you go. But these are the true life stories that just fascinate me. I just can't get enough of them. Flashing blue light looks just like my computer. Bill, do I have a Corsair computer? Oh, no. I know. It took me a second to figure out what you're talking about. No, it's not a Corsair computer. I have, and this studio I put in 2014, so I've been here almost 10 years. And all of these pictures have LEDs on the background, and I would leave them on at night, and I just go home and come home. And imagine my surprise over the course of 8 years, where some of them started burning out. So now the studio needs a major revamp. I'm going to have to replace some of these things. And all the controllers are dead. So what you're seeing is I have two pieces of artwork back up there, acrylic artwork, and they're science fiction covers. And I've got the LEDs in the background, and I had the wrong controller, and the wrong controller sent it a signal that it wasn't used to, so it just does that. And now we've solved two enormous mysteries in the space of a mere 10 minutes. The crazy, complicated story of Jack the Ripper, and also we've solved the ongoing mystery of what is that flashing blue light in the background over Bill's, appears to be his left ear. There you go. All right. Yeah, and three pieces of artwork. I love this Star Trek vector. It's my favorite thing. There's something about that shape. I don't know what it is, but that shape. I just had an insight. This is the last thing I haven't. It sure can't be over because I haven't said this is the last thing I'll say yet. Look at the lines on the vector, okay? Now, the only other thing I've ever seen that had that kind of aesthetic curve to it, that kind of compound curve to it. Only other thing I've ever seen that I thought was as beautiful as the Star Trek vector is the shape of the Jupiter 2. The Jupiter 2 from Lost in Space is transcendently beautiful. Just transcendently beautiful vehicle. It's a compound curve. It's like the step pyramid, the pyramid that they were building at a steep angle and they realized it's going to collapse, so they flattened it out. It's got a curve that comes down to here, and then it comes down to another curve, and then it's got like a round bowl underneath. And the set that they use is just a section of a cone, but the actual model, which I will show you, is amazing. And I was thinking about this not too long ago. Thinking about, well, Bill, if you could have any science fiction
vehicle in history, anything. What would you take? And, oh, I'd take the Enterprise from the movies. Definitely take the movie Enterprise. Wait, you know what? On second thought, you know what? I think I'll take this, because if I had FU money, and I'd like to, I would like to build a life-size version of this thing. Here's it. It doesn't like that. Hang on. I'll do that. And then we do this. Wow, that's a tiny little image. Tiny little image. That's just stunning. There's here it is from the show. Here's a better angle. Actually, hang on. So this little puppy was interstellar capable. It just was gorgeous, gorgeous. Which one? And like so much, this is a computer rendering of it. It's a 3D rendering of it, but this is the shape of it, basically. Oh, come on, stop it. Here you go. That's fantastic. Look at the lines on that. You see what I mean? There's something about the Star Trek vector on that. But if I could have anything, if I had FU money, I would, out back somewhere, I would build this thing, and I would occasionally stay in it. It'd be my treehouse. I'm not expecting it to fly. That's too much to ask for. But I would love to live in that thing. Just, I'm not sure Natasha would feel about it, but I think that would be cool. I just love it. I just think that's a fantastically good looking thing. So there you go. They found this picture. That's the hero model of the Jupiter 2, and it was found. Somebody bought it at auction for, like, I don't know, $20 or $50. It was completely destroyed, and then a guy restored it to new, and he had to do a lot of research to get the silver right and so on. And the same thing happened to the robot. The actual robot they found in a warehouse, and it was just rotting away, and they restored it. And by the way, that's a good thing to end on, because if you can do that to a fiberglass and plastic model, and if you can do it to a rusted out old Ford, if you can restore something to better than its original quality because of our newer materials, if you can do it to those things, you can do it to a country too. The show is made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com who part with some money to keep these shows coming, and for whom we are eternally grateful. Hey, look at that, 3.5 hours. Yeah, getting a little longer here. So we'll split these into two, and we'll get more questions next time. So we'll do the new show on Monday at 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 Eastern, intermediate times as necessary, and I will see you then. So until then, thanks very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time right here on the Stratosphere Lounge.